People in Marvel. My wife is the White Queen. Chapter 1. My wife is the White Queen. Close black lens bracket. The United States, Massa. In a private estate covering an area of 500 square meters. Li Feng was sitting on the sofa, holding a cigar in his hand, looking at the snow scene outside the French window, the corners of his mouth curled up. This is the 42nd day he has been the owner of this manor, and everything is as usual, and he is in a happy mood. He thinks he is very lucky. Because of an accident in his previous life, he came to this world called the Marvel Universe. Unlike the novels he read on the internet, on his first day in the Marvel world, he had nothing and encountered nothing. Whether it is a system, some kind of high technology, or a unique ability. But the only thing that makes him feel lucky is that he has a wife named Emma, nicknamed White Queen. Yes. It was the White Queen who nearly wiped out the X-Men. But at this stage, White Queen does not fully awakening all variant abilities. She is still a plump, protruding, charming, withdrawn and indifferent woman. Definitely, in the city of Massa, White Queen's family background is also very good, because she has a father who was known as the richest man in Massa. And this 500 square meter manor was given to Li Feng by her father as a wedding foil. Time to eat, sir. A young nanny in a maid's skirt came and bowed to Li Feng. Li Feng nodded slightly, put out his cigar, and walked to another living room. In front of the dining table, the White Queen in sexy pajamas is curling up her tender legs, tasting fresh steak. After Li Feng sat down, she raised her willow eyebrows, smiled charmingly, and asked, "How did you sleep last night?" "Everything is fine." Li Feng chuckled, not hiding his greedy eyes at all. "Definitely, it would be better if I had you by my side." Hearing this, White Queen couldn't help rolling her eyes, and glared at Li Feng coquettishly. "Eat your meal." That being said, the White Queen thoughtfully picked up a piece of steak and gently placed it on Li Feng's plate. "Are you still going to the recording site today? Do you need me to ask my father to arrange some bodyguards to accompany you?" Although his tone was cold, Li Feng could clearly hear the warmth in it. He raised the corners of his mouth, walked up to White Queen, put his arms around her waist, and said with a smile, "You look down on your husband and me so much. Isn't it just to declare post the trailer for Die Hard? Nothing to be nervous about. Then when will you come back? I want you to go to the board of directors with me." The White Queen stared at Li Feng with those beautiful dark blue eyes, and asked lightly. About 9 o'clock tonight. Li Feng estimated and responded with a smile. As for the Die Hard trailer he mentioned. Since you are a time traveler, you can't accomplish nothing and become a waste who only eats soft food, right? Therefore, he can only be a second-rate director in the Marvel world to make some movies that have never appeared in this world. In addition to Die Hard, he even made several films such as The Expendables, which made him famous overnight. After all, these movies all existed in Li Feng's memory in his previous life, and he was able to shoot them with ease. "I'll go to the hospital first to see my mother." Because White Queen's mother often takes psychotropic drugs, her physical condition is very poor and she often needs to stay in the hospital for treatment. So White Queen usually goes to the hospital to take care of her mother after eating with Li Feng every day. Li Feng suddenly put White Queen's waist into his arms, and then looked at her affectionately. "What are you doing?" The White Queen was taken aback. 2 seconds later, the four lips met. "Okay, let's go." Li Feng licked the corner of his mouth with a smile, and let go of the White Queen's limp body. On the latter's face, there was a rare blush, making it even more charming. She gave Li Feng a hard look, then turned around, changed her clothes and left. For Li Feng's domineering behavior and actions, the White Queen has experienced countless times. If it were someone else, she would use her unskilled ability to kill the opponent without any hesitation. But in front of Li Feng, she found that she couldn't afford that kind of thought. But the more domineering a person is, the easier it is to be conquered by the domineering. In the city of Massa, what does the identity of the White Queen represent? The daughter of Massa's richest man. The heir in line to the largest trade group in the United States. Because of the mutant, White Queen was abandoned by the elders of the family when she was very young, and was even locked up in a ward controlled by her adoptive mother for a long time. Her first variant, ability, was telepathy, which got her a lot of strange eyes. Until the day when Li Feng traveled to this world, she escaped from that ward with the first awakening of her diamond ability, but was exhausted on the way of being hunted down, and fainted in an alley, and was rescued by Li Feng. From then on, the White Queen's cold personality was gradually changed by Li Feng's shamelessness. Thinking of Li Feng's hooligan actions towards her in the morning, White Queen's heart beat a little faster. From birth to now, she has never been molested like this. In the past, as long as other men looked at her more, they would either be killed by the bodyguards sent by their father, or be strangled by her with a mutant ability of telepathy. But for this man Li Feng, she has nothing to do. However, she didn't resist in her heart. Instead, she became more and more dependent on Li Feng after getting along these days. After his wife left, Li Feng also changed into a suit and drove a Maserati to the city center. As a second-rate director, it is naturally impossible for Li Feng to only make the film Die Hard. Which movie in the previous life has he not seen? Men in Black, 123, Mission Impossible, 123,456, Fast and Furious. Wait, countless. As long as he makes these movies one by one, it is possible for him to become the richest man in the United States, let alone a small massa. Therefore, Li Feng's preliminary plan in this world is to become a better director than Mr. Spielberg. At that time, it will be easy to be worth trillions and become a member of the upper class. Today, Li Feng went to a film company to promote the trailer of Die Hard. He expects to earn around 1 billion for this film. He intends to invest all of the 1 billion yuan in White Queen's business. It's not that White Queen's family business is short of money, but because the moment Li Feng met White Queen, the system suddenly awakened. As long as he makes a movie, the system will reward a lot of items in the movie. The pistol used by the main character in Die Hard. Keanu Reeves' dog. Glasses from Bean Agent. The exclusive car of Fast and Furious. The helicopter that the protagonist of Taken took. Chapter 2: The Threat of Chiguquo Close Black Lens Bracket. Definitely, the system does not always give some useless rewards, and sometimes there are some things that catch Li Feng's eyes. For example, the agent technology in Ace Agent. The assassination technique of This Killer Is Not So Cold. The memory thinking of Sherlock. Apocalypse Star Military Commander. Steppenwolf template. Especially the Steppenwolf template, which is why Li Feng dared not to have bodyguards in the city of Massa. Although he has never used the Steppenwolf template, he has watched DC movies and is not worried about any major trouble. After all, at this point in time, Mutant has not yet fully exploded, and Magneto has not appeared, and even the earliest Hulk should still be in the experiment. As for the Titan who claimed to kill half of the cosmic creatures, Li Feng didn't even take it to heart. He just wants to be a salted fish in peace, live happily with his wife Emma, make billions or tens of billions by making movies, and become a world-respected director. As for saving the world, becoming a superhero, how can it be more important than being with your wife? Li Feng is not interested in these at all, nor does he want to participate in various so-called power struggles. However, if the Titan came to Earth to destroy his good life without knowing the reason, he would not mind being the master once, calling the Avengers, and getting rid of him by the way. People don't offend me, I don't offend others. I don't make trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either. This is Li Feng's idea. Thinking of this, Li Feng glanced at the navigation, and he had already reached his destination. He parked the car in the underground parking lot of the movie company, and then walked to the top floor. For the director, the promotional film is a very important link, during which he will have to meet several leading actors, so there is no delay. However, at the moment, dozens of black vans suddenly stopped outside the building, blocking the entire street. In the van, there are strong men wearing black suits and masks. They all have Hydra tattoos on their necks, and their eyes are fierce. One of the leaders held a suppressed submachine gun in his left hand and a photo with an X painted on it in his right hand. The person in the photo is Li Feng. Recently, Masa's nights have not been as peaceful as usual. The more developed the city, the more hidden dangers are hidden in the dark. Not long ago, the leader of the largest gang force in Masa was assassinated by an unknown organization and replaced the leadership of the entire gang. Except for some big shots living in the higher society who knew this, almost no commoner noticed these changes. Because their eyes were all focused on one person. Li Feng. With the continuous rise of this talented director, Masa's entertainment circle has almost become more and more interested in this name. Among them is the newly promoted leader of the underground gang in Masa City, Runaway. Soon, Li Feng took the elevator to the top floor of the building. Ribadio Building is the most famous building in the city of Masa. Some celebrity receptions are often held here, and it is a relatively prosperous place, so the investors of Die Hard directly booked this place for publicity. At this point, the reporters and the media have not yet arrived. Li Feng has enough time. He is not in a hurry, but walked out of the elevator slowly. But what surprised him was the floor in front of him was actually covered with corpses. There were bullet holes visible to the naked eye all over their bodies. In addition, the bodies of these corpses were covered with a thick layer of ice, causing the entire room to be filled with ice cold. What happens? Li Feng frowned, and there was a smell of blood in the air that made him feel uncomfortable. Robbery. Or revenge. When Li Feng was about to call to ask the organizer what was going on, a sharp and piercing scream suddenly came from his ear. He frowned. His intuition told him that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell. At this moment, there was another ear-piercing scream, vaguely accompanied by some kind of suppressed gunshots. Li Feng narrowed his eyes, gave up the idea of calling the police, followed the source of the sound, walked to the entrance of a conference room in the depths, and pushed the door open to enter. Click. When Li Feng entered, he found that the meeting room was full of people. What shocked him was that these people were all wearing submachine guns full of murderous flavor. At the same time, in front of these guys lay two corpses with familiar faces. Li Feng recognized at a glance that they were the two male protagonists in Die Hard, hired by the director team. What the hell? Li Feng's face turned cold instantly. The protagonist of Lao Tzu's movie was slaughtered. What's the situation? He raised his head and stared at the people sitting in the conference room. They were all tall and tall, with indifferent eyes, filling the air with a strong sense of oppression. You, Li Feng, the director of Die Hard. Suddenly, a burly bald man sitting at the top spoke indifferently to Li Feng. There was a strong bandit air about him, his eyes were extremely cold, and there was a looming cold air on his body, which made the surrounding temperature drop by a few points. Li Feng didn't know the purpose of this group of guys, so he nodded coldly without opening his mouth. Our boss said that he wants you to make movies for him for free for the rest of his life. Otherwise, we will kill anyone who dares to accept your movies. Do you have any objections? Hearing this, Li Feng finally realized suddenly. Isn't this just a threat? Still making movies for free for life. When I do good deeds. Li Feng's face immediately darkened. He put his hands on his chest, and said with a sneer, "Boss, what are you? What if I don't?" Facing this big group of macho men, he didn't have the slightest bit of fear. The group of burly men with guns on their bodies froze for a moment, then laughed wildly, looking at Li Feng with sarcasm and disdain. The bald man in the lead stood up slowly, took out a cigar from his pocket, and pulled out a sharp blade, pressed it against Li Feng's neck, and said with a sneer, "It seems that you don't know the situation. I'll give you two choices, either kneel down and agree to my request, or I'll cut off your limbs and throw them into the river to feed the crocodiles. Or..." He kicked the two corpses under his feet. "Do you want to be killed by me like these two bastards?" The threat of red fruit. If Li Feng was just an ordinary person, hearing this kind of words, he could only choose to obey. After all, there were nearly 20 submachine guns pointing at him, as well as corpses all over the place. But now Li Feng is not panicking, Instead his eyes are even more gloomy. His sharp eyes soon caught sight of the tattoo on the bald man's neck. It seems, from Hydra. Chapter 3 Are you a mutant? Ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. Without the slightest bit of fear, Li Feng reached out and pressed the bald man's shoulder. Originally, I was in a good mood today, but you killed the protagonist I invited and ruined my press conference, so, you guys today, I'm in a good mood. Don't even think about leaving. Quote. Upon hearing this, the gangsters froze again. What the hell? Did we hear it wrong, or did you say it wrong? Facing so many gun points, shouldn't you immediately kneel down and cry for mercy? What's the situation? Are all directors making movies this kind? Boy, don't be shameless. The bald man gave a grin, and everyone in the conference room stood up. But they didn't choose to shoot violently, because the purpose of their coming here was to coerce Li Feng to help them make movies and become their money-making tool. Therefore, they did not intend to kill Li Feng. But if this guy is not sensible, they naturally have 10,000 ways to make him unable to survive or die. It seems that you have given up your only chance to survive. Li Feng's face gradually became tense, and murderous intent emerged in his eyes. Time to try out the power of the Steppenwolf template. However, just as he was about to try it out, the elevator was suddenly opened, and a figure wearing tights and a shield on his back rushed out. Captain America. Li Feng was stunned when he saw this man's appearance. When the burly men in front of them saw this figure, fear flashed across their faces, and the bald man raised his gun without any hesitation and said, "Shoot, and beat these two bastards into a sieve for me." Obviously, these guys didn't expect Captain America to break in at this time. Captain America in this period should have just woken up and has not yet created Avengers. As a man of S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America is definitely a headache for some Hydra elements. Facing Li Feng, an unarmed, second-rate director, the bald men had plenty of ways to torture them. But facing the frozen man Captain America, they must cheer up. As for Li Feng, they didn't care at all. Just a second-rate director. Like this kind of thing, they can find more than a dozen a day. What is it compared to killing Captain America? But what they didn't expect was that Li Feng was the most threatening person in this office. He was already impatient. These guys with Hydra tattoos on their necks ruined his day. Not only did he kill the protagonist he invited, but he even planned to arrest him to make a free movie for the rest of his life. What are you kidding? Stand back, leave this to me. Captain America glanced at Li Feng and gave him a warning wink. But Li Feng ignored him at all. The moment the bullet popped out of the chamber, Li Feng and Captain America turned into a black shadow at the same time, often rushing to both sides with a tacit understanding. However, Li Feng's speed surpassed that of Captain America in an instant. He passed through the densely packed bullets like a ghost, and in an instant came to a strong man, and punched lightly. Die. Click. The skull of this Hydra member was directly shattered. Shit. Seeing this scene, other Hydra members cursed directly and aimed their guns at Li Feng. Only then did they realize that this guy was the biggest problem. But, it was too late. Li Feng has the Steppenwolf template. Although he has never used it, he always has a feeling of endless energy when he is doing certain things. In other words, Li Feng has all the attributes of Steppenwolf's body. Even if he meets the Hulk in his heyday, Li Feng can easily deal with it. What are these ordinary people with guns? At such a close distance, it is simply a dream to injure Li Feng only by these bullets with kinetic energy. Boom, boom, boom. After several piercing tearing air sounds, the meeting room was covered with blood and corpses. Except for the bald man who was covered in cold air, no one survived. Li Feng stood on the table, wiped his fists, and looked at the bald man with indifferent eyes. Next second, the bald man's body was covered with a layer of ice picks, which dropped the temperature in the entire meeting room. This is a mutant, Captain America exclaimed. Unfortunately, you all have to die here. The bald man sneered, and the icy cold air of the manipulator rushed towards Li Feng. Unexpectedly, I can also meet mutant here. Li Feng murmured to himself, not in a panic, but lightly raised 5 fingers, and shook them in the air. Moment. A deep purple lightning flashed out and turned into an incomparably huge axe, forcibly splitting the bald man who had turned into an ice pick into 2 halves. After the blood flickered, everything calmed down. The bald man's eyes were full of fear, as if he saw a demon. Is this the power of the wasteland axe? Li Feng raised the corner of his mouth secretly, and slightly retracted his fingers. The experience of the Steppenwolf template is not bad. You, don't move. Hearing this voice, Li Feng turned his head slowly. The Captain America, who came temporarily from S.H.I.E.L.D., picked up the gun on the ground at some point and pointed it at him. You're going to do something to me. Chris. You know me. Captain America shrank his pupils and paused suddenly. I don't want to cause trouble, and I don't want to find enemies for myself. If you're sensible, clean up this place in the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. I know these guys are from Hydra. Take the credit, don't say my name, don't investigate me, or I will find you, and then smash your head off with one punch. After dropping these few words, Li Feng turned into a black shadow, flashed past Captain America, and disappeared directly. He didn't want to reveal his identity, because it would definitely attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. But this doesn't mean that if trouble comes to him, he will stand by and succumb. If some people who are tired of their jobs want to come to him, he will never hold back, let alone show any mercy. Following Li Feng's disappearance, Captain America discovered that his back was drenched in cold sweat. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but nothing came out. This guy, in the end, is how to solve these gangsters. Why do you know my real identity? Looking at the gangsters lying around with broken skulls, Captain America sighed. Li Feng's metamorphosis actually made him feel instinctively terrified. This should not happen to an agent. Unexpectedly, this second-rate director actually has a side beyond cognition. Captain America murmured softly. Before coming to this building, he received a message from S.H.I.E.L.D. Originally, he came to protect Li Feng. But unexpectedly, Li Feng protected him. Chapter 4: The Horror of Telepathy. Close black lens bracket. After a while, Captain America took out his mobile phone, made a call, and said softly, "Director, I have encountered some trouble here, and something you are interested in." At the same time, after Li Feng quietly solved the troubles in the building, a black van stopped at the door of the villa where he lived. A neon countryman was sitting in the van. He was wearing a silver katana, and there was a faint touch of silver flowing in the meridians of his arms. Silver Samurai, one of the mutants. In fact, the bald mutant who attacked Li Feng earlier, including this mutant who squatted outside the villa in advance, were all newly promoted underground leaders of Massa City, sent by the Rampage. Their real purpose is not to coerce Li Feng into becoming their free labor, but for kidnap the daughter of Massa's richest man. To this end, the runaway made a very comprehensive plan. First, he intends to use Li Feng to intimidate the White Queen. Secondly, he will use the White Queen's life to force Massa's richest man to give up all the entertainment industry in order to expand his territory. Rampage believes that as long as he catches Li Feng, he will not be afraid that the White Queen will not submit. Because according to his investigation, the only person White Queen is close to is Li Feng. Indeed, there is nothing wrong with the idea of running away. But he hadn't expected the White Queen's other identity at all. When the Silver Warrior saw the plump woman enter the villa with his own eyes, a strong desire flashed in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he ordered all the killers in the car to sneak into the periphery of the villa and kill them. The bodyguards stationed outside the flower beds of the villa. These bodyguards are all arranged by White Queen's father. Although they are not the top of the United States, they are all mercenaries. It's just that these bodyguards are still too immature compared to the mutant Silver Warriors. After the battle was easily resolved, the Silver Warrior broke into the living room with 5 killers with cold eyes. However, the White Queen changed into her tight pajamas as expected, sat on the sofa, and looked at these cold-blooded guys indifferently. "Hello, Emma." The leading Silver Warrior put away katana and smiled at the White Queen. You are welcome, my friends, would you like a drink? The White Queen greeted these killers with a charming smile. She had already discovered the existence of these people through telepathy and learned that Li Feng was in trouble. But she is not worried. This is the city of Massa, her father's territory. If there is anything wrong with Li Feng, she will find everyone and kill them. I'd love to have a drink with you if you'd take your shirt off. The silver warrior grinned, and directly pulled out the katana in his hand. He didn't intend to talk too much nonsense. The rampage only gave him 2 hours. If the time is up and the White Queen is not caught, but the richest man in Massa City sends someone to support him, then this operation will be considered a failure. What are the consequences of failure? Everyone will die. He doesn't want to die. Take away. The silver warrior waved his hand, and the 2 killers walked directly towards the White Queen, taking out the silver cuffs from his body at the same time. It would definitely be a great achievement if he could catch the White Queen himself. When the time comes to satisfy the runaway boss, they will all have rewards. Seeing that these killers were about to touch him, White Queen's eyes were full of indifference. She gently raised her tender white hand, and suddenly pinched it in front of her. Whoosh! In the palm of his hand, he shot a sharp diamond arrow, instantly piercing through the heads of the 2 killers. The 2 killers were still immersed in the rewards after completing the mission, and they were instantly killed by this diamond-shaped sharp arrow. The sudden change made the remaining killers dumbfounded. The White Queen crossed her arms, stood up slowly under the sluggish gazes of the killers, and said solemnly, I haven't used this ability to kill people for a long time. You should feel honored. Finished. Her whole body turned into a crystal-clear diamond body, which looked especially beautiful and dazzling under the bright sun. No matter how stupid these killers were, they still reacted, and fear burst out of their eyes. You are a mutant. Telepathy, diamond form. Yes. This is White Queen. After remembering the power of mutant, several killers panicked. Next second, they directly raised the assault rifles on their bodies, no longer caring about capturing the White Queen's order alive, and directly pulled the trigger. If they don't do this, they will die themselves. No one spared their lives. What about mutants? Under the 5.56 caliber bullet, no matter how powerful the mutant is, it will be smashed into a sieve, right? However, what they didn't expect was that the White Queen simply dismissed these almost toy-like firearms. The bullets from the tearing air sounds hit her body, but they all turned into dust. How powerful is the diamond form White Queen? Not only is her body invulnerable, but she can also withstand the blows of huge forces without even feeling tired, and she doesn't need water and food supplements. She can even be immune to the mental attacks of the most powerful telepaths among the mutants. 2 seconds later, countless densely packed sharp drill blades floated out of thin air from beside the White Queen. The killing intent exploded. These killers could no longer control the fear in their hearts, screamed and pulled the trigger. However, nothing works. Die. The White Queen waved lightly. The drill blade shot out, like Death God's sickle, piercing the heads of several killers without stopping. Only the silver samurai remained. Are you a mutant too? White Queen propped up her chin gracefully, and said coldly, I feel it. You guessed it right. The silver warrior grinned, his arms instantly turned into silver metal, and the katana in his hand merged with his 5 fingers. He made a gesture commonly used by warriors, and said, Pray, bitch, I swear it will make you happy next time. As soon as the voice fell, the silver warrior exploded and shot towards the White Queen. However, the moment he approached the White Queen, her diamond form slowly disappeared. She just stretched out a finger, and pressed the silver warrior's forehead. Next second, the silver warrior was startled suddenly, his face became extremely dull, and he lost his combat power in an instant. What do I ask you, what do you answer? White Queen said coldly, who sent you here? The silver samurai replied blankly, Rampage, the underground emperor of the gangsters in Massa City. White Queen asked again, how is my husband Li Feng now? Silver warrior replied, I don't know, we will act in 2 groups. White Queen nodded lightly, and flicked her slender fingers again. The Silver Warrior fell to the ground, brain dead. Chapter 5 Wife, IN-039, M back, asked for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. White Queen's telepathy is just as powerful as the diamond form. Not only can she use this ability to read other people's thoughts and memories, but she can also forcibly modify the other person's memory, control their thinking, perform mental shielding, and even connect the minds of multiple people, using telepathy to put the victim in an unconscious state of sleep. Overall, among all mutants, White Queen's telepathy ability is second only to Professor X. In the end, all the killers who broke into the villa died in the hands of White Queen. She stretched, and then used the diamond ability to clean up the corpses. For now, she doesn't want Li Feng to be exposed to the fact that she is a mutant so early. After all, in her eyes, Li Feng is just an ordinary person now. Definitely, Li Feng didn't know that his wife had been attacked by another group of killers. At the moment, he had just walked out of a high-end clothing store on the street, holding brand new clothes that had cost hundreds of thousands of yuan in his hand. This is Li Feng's habit. Every time he goes home, he will bring a gift to the White Queen. In his eyes, this is called freshness. Although given the White Queen's family background, any clothes you want can be tailored by a well-known tailor with just a few words. But every time Li Feng buys clothes, she will take them seriously and wear them to go out. The new European-style dresses on the shelves this time look pretty good, and my wife will be very happy to receive them. While humming, Li Feng stuffed the clothes into the back seat of his Maserati. In his eyes, White Queen tends to be perfect both in facial features and figure. She is absolutely plump, and there is a rare vixen in every gesture. Therefore, the more clothes that can highlight the figure, the more suitable for her. Before Li Feng chose clothes for her, she basically wore some simple casual clothes, completely covering up her figure. Li Feng, who was about to drive home, didn't know that he had attracted the attention of countless people. In response to Li Feng's arrogance in the building, all of Li Feng's private information has been displayed on the big screen at the SHIELD headquarters in New York City. And in front of the big screen, Director Nick Fury, Detective Phil Coulson, and Captain America, who just came back, look brooding. It seems that there is nothing special about it. A second-rate director who makes movies, is he really that fierce? Captain America said, "When I first met him, I thought so too, but after he killed those Hydra elements in the conference room, I was completely dumbfounded." Nick Fury nodded and asked, "Have any of you met this person in real life?" Detective Phil Coulson hesitated for a moment, then said, "I've seen it. Last time he filmed The Expendables 3, I went to the scene. The Expendables 3 was also filmed by him." Nick Fury was taken aback for a moment. As agents, they are particularly sensitive to this kind of subject matter. After all, who wouldn't want their career to be made into a movie? Every scene in The Expendables 3 inches is almost in line with the scene when they perform their tasks. It's just that what Nick Fury doesn't understand is why Li Feng, an ordinary guy, would take the boat of the daughter of the richest man in Massa. Don't look at the current Li Feng, who is hailed as the action film director of the new century, but in the eyes of the richest man in Massa, he is still no different from an ordinary person, right? I've seen the richest man in Massa. He is a proud and conceited man. Nick Fury flicked the cigarette ash in his hand, and said in a deep voice, "Based on his appearance alone, there is nothing unusual about Li Feng. How could you be attracted by Emma, the daughter of Massa's richest man?" Director. Detective Phil Coulson seemed to remember something, and he slid his palm on the big screen, and several photos of the hospital ward appeared, and said, "I found out that the daughter of the richest man in Massa was locked up according to gossip, she may be one of the mutants." Mutant. Nick Fury frowned. Could it be that Li Feng is also a mutant? That's why they came together. "Don't know," Phil Coulson replied. "You go to contact the two of them, if you can, gain their trust, and bring them in." Phil Coulson froze for a moment, without asking why. Usually when encountering such incidents, SHIELD will investigate for a period of time before making a decision to recruit or kill them. But this time, Director Nick didn't do that. This is obviously different from usual. But Phil Coulson doesn't ask on his own initiative, he knows his position clearly. Just a small detective, not yet qualified to ask the director's decision. By the way, Phil Coulson. Nick Fury stopped him suddenly, and said, if you can't recruit this guy named Li Feng, don't worry, I always feel that he is more mysterious than we imagined. Quote. Phil Coulson nodded, and left. At the same time, the United States, Kentucky Fried Chicken. The newly established mutant school, the Brainwave Augmentation Laboratory. Professor X took off the Brainwave Augmentation helmet, and whispered to the X-Men member Beast behind him, I found it, in Massa City. Did she use her ability again? Beast took a deep breath and said, are we going to stop it, Professor? No, the time hasn't come yet. Professor X shook his head slightly and said, there are many mutants hidden in Massa City. Just now, I saw 2 new mutants, but they all died after 10 minutes. The brainwave signal disappeared, and I couldn't see anything. Someone's killing mutant. Beast said tensely, is that the Magneto guy? No, it's not him. Professor X still shook his head and said, Hancock, I suspect that a new mutant has appeared, but my brain waves cannot detect his existence. What? Beast said with a face full of shock, there is an existence that you can't perceive. That man is very powerful. Professor X murmured with a serious face, I'm worried that he will become an uncontrollable existence like Magneto, and mutant will be in danger by then. Maybe, we can try to contact him. Beast stroked his chin and said, let Wolverine go. Don't worry, I'll try to monitor his brainwaves. If he is a mutant, maybe I can talk to him directly. Professor X took a deep breath and put on the brainwave amplifier again. The light in the entire laboratory dimmed. Star-like lights flickered one by one, and countless pictures flickered in Professor X's mind. Massa City. As soon as he parked the Maserati, Li Feng felt a flash of pain in his head. He frowned slightly, but soon saw the pretty figure of the White Queen not far away, so he didn't care, and ran towards her. Honey, I'm back. Chapter 6 Please find me at your door. Open black lens bracket. Ask for flower evaluation tickets. Close black lens bracket. Massa City, private villa. As usual, Li Feng hugged White Queen's face and kissed her, then handed her the clothes he bought, and said with a smile, my lord, I promise you will like the clothes I bought this time. Quickly open them and have a look. Which one of the clothes you bought didn't I like? White Queen glanced at him, but when she took out some clothes and saw a few low-cut dresses, she couldn't help but shamefully said, this is too revealing. Put it on and have a look. Li Feng urged with a chuckle. The White Queen glared at him, but did not refuse, took off her pajamas in front of Li Feng, and put on a new dress, making her charming temperament even more charming. Look, the perfect proportion. Li Feng looked up and down recklessly, hugged the White Queen's waist into his arms, and gently stroked the slender waist with his fingers. Husband chose well, right? White Queen hummed softly, her legs felt a little weak, but she didn't break free. For some reason, she always felt that she was very conservative in front of Li Feng. By the way, the announcement of Die Hard has encountered some troubles. I have to tell the investors that 2 protagonists have been murdered. Li Feng suddenly remembered something and said. He didn't intend to tell the White Queen what happened just now. If he let her know that he had someone who overthrew the abilities of a dozen Hydra members, things would be difficult. Didn't you promise me to go shopping with me? White Queen broke free from his arm and snorted coldly. Li Feng paused, looked around the villa, and said, then I'll ask the bodyguard outside to inform. Wait. White Queen shook her head and said, I don't want to go shopping anymore, you should make a phone call first. The bodyguards in the villa were all killed by the killer brought by the Silver Warrior. She didn't want Li Feng to be suspicious for no reason. Li Feng nodded, took out his mobile phone, and called the investor. Soon, the other party responded, claiming that S.H.I.E.L.D. will take full responsibility for this matter, and the announcement of Die Hard was changed to 2 days later. Li Feng has no objection to this. Presumably Captain America must have come forward to solve this trouble, so he doesn't need to worry too much. After hanging up the phone, Li Feng turned around and took a look at the White Queen in the living room. The white and tender skin flashed through the gap in the collar, and her two straight long legs, and she matched it with the clothes she picked out by herself. All of a sudden, I felt my nose was dry and hot. "Why are you staring at me like that?" The White Queen glanced at Li Feng with her tear-marked glasses, but instead of avoiding it, she put her straight legs on the table to see everything in sight. Li Feng chuckled, rushed towards the White Queen, and said with a smile, "My lord, since you don't want to go shopping, let's find something else to do." "What's up?" The White Queen blushed, glared at him, and tried to push away, but her whole body was powerless. As soon as the words fell, Li Feng picked up the White Queen and rushed into the bedroom with both feet. 2 days later, early in the morning, while eating the breakfast that White Queen made herself, Li Feng admired her flushed cheeks. During these 2 days, the two of them could be said to have never even stepped out of the door. They just stayed in the bedroom for 2 full days. As for what to do, I understand everything. With a gentle smile on his face, Li Feng rubbed White Queen's unconsciously weak legs, causing the latter to stare coquettishly. Although this wife with a knife mouth and a bean-curd heart said no, her body was honest and terrifying. After 2 days of tossing, I still have the energy to make breakfast for him by myself. If the system hadn't made Li Feng's body much stronger, he probably wouldn't even have the strength to walk. After finishing breakfast, the White Queen stood up, straightened Li Feng's collar, and said softly, "Come back early tonight, I have learned some good dishes recently. If you come back late, you won't be able to eat them." Quote, "Don't worry, my wife." Li Feng kissed her forehead and said with a smile, "Tonight. I promise you won't be able to get out of bed." "That's what you said last time." White Queen folded her hands on her chest, raised the corners of her mouth, and stretched out her fingers to scratch Li Feng's face with a hint of sarcasm. "See you at night. If you have any troubles, please call me. I will let my father send someone to solve it." Li Feng smiled slightly, turned and left. In order to better promote the publicity of Die Hard, the investors decided to hold the premiere directly today. As the director, Li Feng had to attend a singing reception at the scene. In this reception, not only well-known directors in the industry were invited, but also many high-society celebrities came to join in. Although all this is due to the arrogance of the investors, the social impact brought about by Li Feng's filming of The Expendables 123 cannot be ruled out. Soon, Li Feng came to the top floor of the building as usual. The difference from last time was that many people had already gathered in the hall at this time. As the director of the film, Li Feng was invited by the organizer to come on stage and say a few words before being surrounded by the media. "Director Li Feng, I heard that you plan to make some espionage-like films in the future. Can you tell us the specific plot?" "Mr. Li Feng, what do you think as a director about the murder of the leading actor? Is it related to your personal vendetta?" "Mr. Li Feng, as a director of the new generation of action films, I heard that you have merged the two positions of director and screenwriter. How do you maintain a balance between the two?" Countless questions came overwhelming, but Li Feng was not flustered. He had already made preparations before coming, so his answers were all fluent. After the interview, most of the guests went to watch the premiere, while Li Feng came backstage alone, planning to eat some delicious buffet. But at this moment, his eyes suddenly saw a familiar face. Phil Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why did this guy come to his press conference? Could it be? Li Feng hurriedly turned his back to avoid his discovery. As a veteran worker in the Marvel world, Phil Coulson's popularity in Li Feng's heart is too great. As long as this guy appears in any scene, nothing good will happen in that scene. It is not difficult to guess that Phil Coulson is here, probably because of Captain America's return to S.H.I.E.L.D. Just as Li Feng was thinking about how to leave early, Phil Coulson suddenly walked towards him with a glass of wine. Mr. Li Feng, a genius director in the 21st century, has been famous for a long time. Phil Coulson held out his glass, nodded to Li Feng with a smile, and showed his ID. "My name is Phil Coulson, and I'm from the National Security Investigations Agency. Faced with this familiar way of greeting, Li Feng was expressionless, but a murderous intent emerged in his heart, which made the surrounding temperature seem to drop a lot. Chapter 7 IN-039. Am not interested. Open black lens bracket. Seeking flower comments. Close black lens bracket. He would be very angry if S.H.I.E.L.D. were to intervene in his life at this time. But if you pretend you don't know anything, it may cause even bigger troubles. After thinking for a few seconds, Li Feng decided to adapt. Oh, what's the matter? Li Feng nodded lightly, not intending to toast in return. Phil Coulson withdrew his hand in embarrassment. No matter how stupid he was, he could see that Li Feng didn't seem to welcome him, but he didn't care too much. In this line of work, it's very common to meet such famous people, and it's very difficult to be underestimated. Normal thing. He whispered. You should still remember what happened here 2 days ago. We have received a tip that the largest gang group in Massa City has already targeted you, so could you please provide us with some information about this? News. The National Security Investigations Service may guarantee your safety. Quote. Hearing this, Li Feng knew it was not easy to get away today. He took a deep breath and tried his best to calmly say, I have already warned Captain America, but he still didn't listen to me. Phil Coulson froze immediately, and asked tentatively, Chris told me, you seem to know him. Does it matter if you know him or not? Li Feng sneered and said, Phil Coulson, as a small agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you should be a smart person. I don't like talking nonsense to smart people. What's the matter? You just say it. Phil Coulson was speechless for a moment. He didn't expect that Li Feng even knew that he was a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. It seems that this guy in front of him is definitely not an ordinary person. He thought for a few seconds before seriously saying, Mr. Li Feng, as you think, I am indeed a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. The purpose of my coming here is to find out why you have some powers that normal people cannot control. Quote. Definitely, maybe you'll be offended by my rude question, but that's okay. Because throughout the United States, S.H.I.E.L.D. has absolute control over the territory, and we are independent of other governments, even the White House. We are committed to finding and protecting every strong person who is different from ordinary people, and you are one of them. If you are willing to cooperate with me, we'd better find a quiet place to talk. Maybe you will be interested in joining S.H.I.E.L.D. After speaking, Phil Coulson habitually shook his shoulders, waiting for Li Feng's response. Oh, I'm not interested. Li Feng refused without any thought. What are you kidding? Lao Su is living a happy life now, his wife is caring, and he has no worries about eating and drinking. In just a few years, he will become a top director, be famous and worth trillions. Why join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Too busy. Mr. Li Feng, you'd better think about it before giving me an answer. The smile on Phil Coulson's face gradually faded, and he said, as you can see, S.H.I.E.L.D. has strongholds all over the world. People like you, more or less have some rebellious mentality, and we have many ways to solve such troubles. After all, no civilian in any country wants to be threatened by some uncontrollable factors. What do you think? What do you mean? Li Feng's face turned cold, killing intent emerged. You're threatening me. No, I'm just stating some facts. Phil Coulson shook his head slightly and said, I just want to tell you that there are actually quite a few people like you. As he spoke, Phil Coulson took out a mobile phone, pulled out videos and photos, put them in front of Li Feng, and said, Look, this is a physicist from the state next door to Massa, and after being exposed to gamma rays for a while, he mutated into a green monster. And this guy in a red bodysuit with a spider tattoo on his chest, gliding between the buildings in Nukem, amazing, isn't it? And this one, the guy who can summon thunder and lightning with a hammer in his hand. When I saw the video for the first time, I almost peed my pants. There's even this guy with steel all over his body. Their kind call him Colossus, and he can't be harmed by any projectile type of thermal weapon, not even grenades. Here, the guy who can stretch out a few iron claws from his hand, have you noticed that he looks like a wolf? The longing eyes are very charming. Look. Phil Coulson smiled, put away his phone, and said, Mr. Li Feng, as I said just now, there are actually quite a few people like you. If one day, you can work with them, isn't that a good temptation? Li Feng's eyes were indifferent, and he still had no intention of speaking. But he knew that from the moment Phil Coulson took out these photos and videos, it meant that the Marvel world was officially on the right track. If it were someone else who traveled through time, he might join S.H.I.E.L.D. immediately, and then pretend to be aggressive with Avengers and fight monsters. But at this time, he only wanted to make movies and become a world-renowned director. There is no risk, and no life is required. Seeing that Li Feng didn't answer himself, Phil Coulson took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over, saying, "Mr. Li Feng, this is my phone number, if you think it over, you can call me." "No need." Li Feng put his hands in his pockets, turned around lightly, and left a few words. "Phil Coulson, I don't want to get in trouble or have anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. Saving the world, saving humanity is not for me. I just want to be a big director. If these people in the video want to be the protagonist of my movie, I can let them contact me. I guarantee the pay will satisfy them. But, if you and the S.H.I.E.L.D. behind you want to control me, or destroy my life, I promise, you will regret it." The threat in the tone was extremely strong. Watching Li Feng's gradually disappearing figure, Phil Coulson took a deep breath, pressed the communicator behind his ear, and said in a low voice, "Director, did you hear what he said just now?" After a long time. Only then did Nick Fury's thick voice come back from the headset. "Well, I heard that. This is a strong guy." Phil Coulson sighed and said helplessly, "It's not easy. I have to say that in Phil Coulson's impression, Li Feng is definitely an extremely difficult person. In fact, in the conversation just now, he has already used both soft and hard, whether it is a request or a threat. But Li Feng, just don't eat oil and salt. Make it clear that you don't want to be part of S.H.I.E.L.D. So there are only two options. Or, erase this uncontrollable factor. Or, think of another way to force Li Feng to join." Chapter 8: Threats and Being Threatened. Phil Coulson pondered suddenly, "Director, we have found out that the father of Li Feng's wife, who is also the richest man in Massa City, has been very restless in recent years. Maybe we can start with him." "You mean, knock on the richest man in Massa City to make Li Feng obey?" Nick Fury squinted his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I hope it works. Let's leave this matter for now. You arrange people to watch Li Feng, don't let him cause any trouble, and leave the rest to me." Phil Coulson hung up the phone. Fury stared at Li Feng's photo with his falcon-like eyes, and at the same time, he swiped a surveillance video. In the video, the corners of Li Feng's mouth curled up, turning into a black shadow, approaching a gangster in an instant, and smashing his skull with his bare hands. At the same time, the picture freezes at the scene where Li Feng raises one hand and uses air to kill the ice-covered mutant. This level of lethality is comparable to Captain America. Fury took a deep breath, a look of shock in his eyes. He actually doesn't care about Li Feng's indifferent personality. What he cares more about is this person's ability. All aspects of the ability it displays are very similar to the Captain America when it first woke up. If he cannot be lured to S.H.I.E.L.D., there will probably be more uncontrollable factors in the future. Thinking of this, Nick Fury stopped hesitation, and said to the assistant beside him, "Call out the personal information and phone number of the richest man in Massa City. Let me chat with him. The call process must be kept confidential." The assistant nodded slightly. 10 seconds later, the call was connected. Soon, the phone was connected, and a steady voice came from the phone. "Hello, this is my personal phone number. Who are you?" "My name is Nick Fury, and I am the director of the National Security Investigation Bureau. Your son-in-law Li Feng has been targeted by us. You must listen to every word I say next," Nick Fury said quickly without any nonsense. "We know that you have bribed officials 36 times in Massa City, 25 commercial falsehoods of planting and framing, and 65 unfair market practices, and your company has so far there's still a business that launders money. I know everything about you, down to how many boyfriends your mistress has had, how many rich men she's slept with." Quote. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time before a dry word came back. "What do you want me to do?" "It's very simple," Nick Fury said with the corners of his lips curled up. "I want you to come up with something that troubles your son-in-law, such as a bad movie at the box office, or bumping into a wall during filming, etc., as long as it makes him not want to continue making movies." "Thoughts? That's fine." The other end of the phone seemed a little unbelievable. "It's that simple." "Definitely, it's even more complicated." Nick Fury sneered and said, "Let your daughter leave Li Feng." I can't make a decision, my daughter never likes to listen to me." "Then do as I say." After speaking, Nick Fury hung up the phone directly. The situation is much simpler than imagined, and the richest man in Massa City shows no signs of unwillingness to cooperate. This is not surprising. After all, SHIELD is the most high-level special department in the United States. Even the personal safety of the president needs them to supervise. What is the richest man in a small city of Massa? Although White Queen's father is the richest man in Massa City, he is also considered to be a semi-influential political figure, and he can almost break a hole in Massa City with a single sentence. But he was still nothing in front of SHIELD. That's why Nick Fury dared to be so direct and bold. The person on the other end of the phone obviously knew this fact, so after being silent, he still gave in. At the same time, Li Feng was sitting in the seat of the premier, sipping wine lightly, recalling the previous conversation with Phil Coulson. A large part of the reason why his attitude is so decisive is because he doesn't want to be ruined by SHIELD his happy life. If the SHIELD guy wants to force his way in, he doesn't mind getting everything sorted out. With the ability of the Steppenwolf template, trying to deal with SHIELD that has not yet formed Avengers is like eating and drinking water. However, it is worth mentioning the few clips that Phil Coulson showed himself just now. The recovery of the Marvel world heralds the coming disaster of the whole Earth. There is a saying that troubled times make heroes. This is also Li Feng's idea. But this hero is not the hero who saves the world. Li Feng raised the corner of his mouth. If in the next time, he recreates most of the important events that happened in the Marvel world through filming, then his worth will soar wildly in a short period of time. Enough to soar to what extent? The whole of the United States, and indeed the world, will be proud to have seen his films. At that time, the profit he will get will not be just tens of billions, trillions, it's as simple as that. Even, he can set up another, Marvel movie universe, in the Marvel world. As long as he succeeds, he can make money while lying down, and even lead his wife to live a shameless life. Thinking of this, Li Feng took out his mobile phone from his pocket and called Feynman, the manager of the director team. For The Expendables 123, he put together a studio team, and Feynman was the first agent he hired, and ability was great. "Hey, old man, I have something to trouble you, is it convenient?" "Go ahead, boss. I'm going to start a new movie company called Marvel Studios, Inc." "Marvel. What a unique name. How much do you need to invest?" "Put all the funds in the account into it, and after the release of Die Hard, all the people in the studio will be merged into the company." "All funds. Boss, what do you want to do?" "In the future, you will understand." Li Feng hung up the phone and immersed himself in his grand plans. In Massa City, an underground boxing arena is holding a fiery match with odds of 1-5. But at the scene, there was only one person sitting in the largest seat of the auditorium. He was thin, with blonde hair, wearing a black tights, with a faint smell of cigars on his body, and he was staring greedily at the two fighters on the boxing ring. He called, "Runaway." The new underground emperor of Massa City is also the host of this black boxing arena. Before he officially ascended the throne, the old underground emperor of Massa City had controlled Massa City for decades. But with the appearance of Rampage, the city of Massa has completely changed. Chapter 9 No Choice Close Black Lens Bracket. At this time, Rage suddenly stood up, walked to the center of the boxing ring, waved his hand impatiently, causing the two boxers to roll aside, and then said indifferently, "Bring it up." In a minute. Two gangsters came up carrying a blonde man covered in blood and threw him to the ground. It's been a long time since I've done anything to my subordinates. Rampage smiled grimly, and pressed the blonde man's head with 5 fingers. You know, I'm afraid of trouble, and I don't like dealing with government people. But I like money, I like lots of money, so I take your advice. But the consequence of doing this is that I was targeted by people from S.H.I.E.L.D. just after I arrived in Massa City. Do you know how much trouble this will cause me? The voice fell. There was a click. One arm of the blonde man was pinched off by the violent one-handed man, and he let out a horrible cry, his body trembling, and kept begging for mercy. Boss, no. Don't. I was wrong. I shouldn't have given you money. This bad idea. No, you're right, it's me who's wrong, I've listened to your advice stupidly. Said violently in a cold tone, anyone can hear the anger contained in his tone. As for the poor guy kneeling on the ground, he was the mastermind who proposed to kidnap Li Feng and White Queen to threaten the richest man in Massa City. Originally, this plan was considered to be foolproof, and even in order to achieve the goal, Rampage sent his 2 capable generals, Iceman and Silver Warrior. But no one could have imagined that Li Feng and White Queen would kill them immediately. That's not what made Rampage so angry. The death of the 2 mutants meant nothing to him. The real trouble is that S.H.I.E.L.D. took over the latter. This means that Rampage can no longer continue to do what he wants to do as he pleases. No gangster wants to be targeted by S.H.I.E.L.D., and neither does Mutant. Just at the moment, at the entrance of the underground black boxing arena, 2 figures suddenly appeared. One of them has a human face with a wolf beard, sharp eyes, and a strong figure. The other one was sitting in a wheelchair with a calm face like a pool of stagnant water. When Rampage saw these 2 faces, his eyes shrank suddenly, his whole body tensed up, and he squinted and said, X-Men. What are you doing here? Give you a warning. Professor X took out a photo of Li Feng and White Queen from his pocket, and threw it in front of the Rampage. From now on, don't make trouble with these 2 people, otherwise the X-Men will regard you as an enemy and tear you into pieces. Wolverine took over the right to speak, her tone extremely indifferent. What if I say no? Runaway's face twitched, and he responded sternly. This isn't the first time he's had issues with the X-Men. As a mutant, he definitely knows what the existence of the X-Men represents. You have no choice. Professor X said lightly. It seems that you must think that I am easy to provoke. Rampage grinned grimly and snapped his fingers. Around the black boxing arena, nearly 30 or 40 half-naked strong men slowly walked out, full of oppressive aura. Whoosh. Wolverine raised her hands violently, 6 claws cut through the space, and let out a whine. Just when he was about to rush forward, Professor X reached out his hand to stop him, raised his head and said calmly, Rampage, you mean, you are going to fight against the X-Men? No boss likes to be threatened. Runaway said viciously, especially, in his own field. Threat. Professor X raised the corner of his mouth in a rare way, and said sharply, No, we are not threatening, but, warning. The voice fell. He suddenly raised 5 fingers and pinched out of thin air. Buzz buzz. Immediately, everyone in the black boxing arena held their heads and screamed in pain. A terrifying telepathy spread in the brains of these people, tearing their brain cells. But the scream, which lasted only a dozen seconds, stopped. Professor X and Wolverine turned and left without stopping. Foo *K. Foo *K. Foo *K. With a pale and angry face, violently cursed at the surroundings a few times, but he didn't send anyone to chase after him. This is the city of Massa. If he wanted to, he could immediately call hundreds of brothers with submachine guns and beat these 2 guys into a sieve. But there was no Rampage, he chose to swallow his breath. Because he doesn't want to be enemies with S.H.I.E.L.D. and X-Men at the same time. But that doesn't mean he won't be angry. Fuzu turned around, looked at the trembling body, stretched out 5 withered fingers, and crushed his neck directly. Throw his body in a septic tank, garbage deserves to be with garbage. Yes. The body of the blonde man was carried down. With a gloomy face, Lu Zhou took out his handkerchief, wiped the blood off his fingers, took out his mobile phone, made a call, and ordered, "Investigate for me, what is the origin of that guy named Li Feng, and why are there so many people here? Come to protect him, and don't do those business recently, I don't want to get into trouble with S.H.I.E.L.D. Silver Warrior and Iceman are killed, let the Griffin and Angel come to me, and when things calm down, I'm going to make a big one." On the other end of the phone, he hung up without saying anything. Fu Zhu took a deep breath, the anger in his eyes gradually disappeared, and he gradually calmed down. The White Queen is one of the mutants, he has heard about it, but he still can't believe it. Now it seems that even the X-Men have come forward, and this matter is almost inseparable. But what is the origin of that guy named Li Feng? After the premiere of Die Hard, Li Feng drove back to the villa. At the moment, it was 8 o'clock in the evening, the lights in the living room were still on, and meals were already prepared on the table. The White Queen, who was wearing a sexy dress, was sitting on the sofa, leaning on her white and tender legs, like a pure relief, watching TV with relish, which was pleasing to the eye. "Honey, how do you know that I'm coming back, and you have specially prepared meals?" Li Feng stepped forward directly, and hugged him roughly into his arms. "Don't underestimate my connections." White Queen glanced at him and said, "It's 30 minutes later than I expected. Isn't there something troublesome?" Li Feng put his finger on the soft body restlessly, and said with a smile, "Let's go, let's have dinner together." He wasn't going to tell White Queen S.H.I.E.L.D. about his troubles, it would make her suspicious. But I have to say that White Queen's cooking skills are really good. Not only did they prepare a lot of expensive ingredients, they even made a big bowl of caviar, which is very fragrant with the king crab's crab paste. Before meeting Li Feng, White Queen was a novice in the kitchen who knew nothing, and couldn't even wash the dishes. But after living with Li Feng, she can come up with some new tricks almost every day. This is one of the reasons why Li Feng loves his wife so much. During the meal, White Queen suddenly raised her beautiful eyes and said, "Father called me just now and asked you not to continue making movies for the next 2 years." Li Feng froze for a moment, thinking he had heard wrong. "He bought us an island in Maldives, shall we go on our honeymoon?" The White Queen tilted her head, her eyes narrowed into crescents. This. Li Feng couldn't help hesitation. 2 years. In 2 years, I am afraid that even the Battle of New York has passed, right? At that time, it would be too late to make a movie, and it might even lose a lot of fame. But he couldn't refuse his father-in-law's kindness. This is how to do. The White Queen saw Li Feng's hesitation almost at a glance. She put down her chopsticks, and asked earnestly, "Honey, have you been worrying a lot lately?" Chapter 10 The thread of Professor X open black lens bracket ask for flower comments, close black lens bracket. Hearing this, Li Feng was not nervous, and while enjoying the steak, he responded with a light smile, "It's really a bit troublesome." The White Queen's slender hand holding the knife and fork paused slightly, and there was an imperceptible killing intent in her eyes, and she asked calmly, "What? I can let my father handle it." No, it's not that troublesome." Li Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just thinking, which actor is better to have as the protagonist in the next 3 movies?" The White Queen was obviously stunned for a moment, she didn't expect Li Feng's so-called trouble to be this trouble. The killing intent in her eyes was subdued, and she didn't have any intention of going into it. She said casually, "I think that black actor named Smith Will is pretty good." "That's him." Li Feng made a decision on the spot, and didn't intend to continue the topic. He didn't want the White Queen to know about S.H.I.E.L.D. "Father, I will tell you that I am your woman, and there is no reason not to support your career." The White Queen wiped her wrists, cleaned the dining table, took out a gift box from the room, and handed it to Li Feng. "What's this?" Li Feng slowly opened it, and inside was an expensive watch with several diamonds inlaid on the surface, which was obviously expensive to fake. "Christmas present." White Queen smiled slightly, but didn't explain too much, because the diamonds on this watch were generated by her own mutant ability, and attached with a ray of telepathy mental power, if Li Feng was in any fatal danger, the diamonds would cover his whole body for protection. If the watch is directly destroyed, she can also receive the induction immediately. Christmas, isn't there still 1 week left? Li Feng didn't ask much, and put the watch on his wrist. But soon he realized that this might be something that the White Queen specially gave him for self-defense. After all, White Queen's ability is a diamond change. Thinking of this, Li Feng felt a little warmer in his heart, smiled and put his arms around White Queen's waist, and said, "Honey, what gift do you want? I will prepare it for you." How can you ask what others want when you give someone a gift? The White Queen snorted softly, stretched out her finger and flicked Li Feng's head, then turned and walked into the kitchen. "I like everything you gave me." Li Feng was taken aback, then smiled helplessly, the love in his eyes deepened a bit. The next day, early morning. A shocking reminder sound suddenly sounded in Li Feng's brain. Open black lens bracket ding, close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host for the successful release of Die Hard, and the reward, Nanoscale Regenerative Healing Factor. Brief. The reward is the nano-regenerative healing factor of the protagonist in Bloodshot, close black lens bracket. Bloodshot. Nanoscale Regenerative Healing Factor. Li Feng was stunned for a moment. This was the first time he had heard of such a reward. But it's not that he hasn't seen the movie. The tough guy played by Vin Diesel has always been one of Li Feng's favorite candidates for starring in action movies. However, he was not very interested in this reward. Regenerative Healing Factor. Sounds pretty good. But for him now, it is not of much use. When the system is just awakening, Li Feng will still be a little excited. But as time passed, he lost interest and put all his energy into making movies. He doesn't intend to save the world, so what is he in such a rush to become stronger? Life is pretty good now, sharing the same bed with White Queen every day, isn't it sweet? Thinking of his caring and charming wife, the corners of Li Feng's mouth could not help but curl up. Jingle bell. The phone rang suddenly. Li Feng glanced at the number, and lazily pressed the connect button. "Boss, the company has been registered, and we need you to come here and go through the legal person procedures." "Okay, I'll be right over." After hanging up the phone, Li Feng tidied up, made out with the White Queen as usual, and then drove out. After Li Feng left, 2 men walked into the villa without anyone noticing. One of them was pushing a wheelchair and the other was sitting in it. When the man in the wheelchair saw the figure in the living room who seemed not surprised by their arrival, he narrowed his eyes. "Emma, we've been looking for you for a long time." Professor X looked at White Queen calmly and said. "So what?" The White Queen looked at the two of them indifferently, playing with the diamond crystals like Newtonian fluid on her fingers. Seeing this scene, Wolverine subconsciously stood in front of Professor X, showing a defensive look. "It seems that you are more proficient in controlling your abilities." Professor X smiled gently and said, "When your mother brought you to see me, I felt." "She's not my mother." White Queen's chill suddenly soared, and her voice rose several decibels. Okay, calm down." Professor X raised his hand and pressed against the White Queen. The latter was taken aback, and a look of disbelief flashed in his eyes. She felt her brain and body calmed down at that moment. Obviously, this is the means of Professor X at work. "The reason I came to Massa City to look for you this time is not to take you back to mutant school." Professor X propped his chin and said softly, "You probably don't know that the underground emperor of Massa City is a man named Runaway." "Mutant, right? Mutant." White Queen wrinkled her beautiful eyes and said, "What's none of my business?" "It's really none of your business." Professor X shrugged his shoulders and said, "But, he seems to be very interested in the man next to you." Whoosh. For a moment, the killing intent on White Queen's body soared. "Don't get excited." Professor X's eyes fluctuated. He raised his hand and said helplessly, "We have already gone to the place where we ran away, and warned him for you. Don't expect me to thank you." White Queen sneered and said, "I still remember the scene when you controlled me in order to suppress my ability." "Sorry, Emma." Professor X pushed the wheelchair to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looked at the flower beds in the villa, and murmured, "Everyone makes mistakes, and I am no exception. I am not here to claim credit for you, just to remind you that the world seems to be starting to recover." The White Queen didn't speak. "My brain is very messy recently." Professor X rubbed his temples, and said with a serious tone, "The plan that Magneto and I proposed at the beginning has completely failed. We can't control the continuous gushing of mutants. Those evil, the uncontrolled guy is likely to mess up the world. They will attack the same kind as you and me. Then let them come," White Queen said lightly with a flash of disdain in her beautiful eyes. Professor X smiled wryly, and asked, "What if the one named Li Feng is also one of them?" Click. An icicle-like diamond blade was instantly suspended above Professor X's head. Chapter 11 Dawn and #039. Read it. I and #039. LL kill them all. Please comment on flowers. Close black lens bracket. At the same time, Wolverine, who was standing aside, had already pierced the bone seam with her claws, aiming at the White Queen's neck. "No one dares to threaten him in front of me." The White Queen's eyes were full of murderous intent, and the surrounding temperature dropped a little because of this. Professor X was silent for a few seconds, then said softly, "You have changed, Emma." The White Queen didn't speak, but the sharp blade suspended above Professor X's head sank another point. "Let's go." Professor X turned the wheelchair around and dropped a few words. "Emma, stay away from him, that's all I can tell you. He is not a mutant, but possesses the ability of a mutant, which is dangerous, very dangerous. If you need help with the X-Men, feel free to contact me. We are friends forever." The moment the sharp blade disappeared, the steel claw retracted. Wolverine stared at the White Queen for a few seconds before following Professor X. After the two left, the indifferent White Queen took out her cell phone and made a call. "Send me the information about the Underground Emperor in Massa City. I want to know where he is now." A few minutes later, White Queen looked at the photos and address in her phone, and changed into clean clothes. "Rampage, isn't it? I'm here to find you." The White Queen murmured softly, her cold eyes made one's heart chill. This is the original face of White Queen. During Mutant Ability's first awakening, she slaughtered an entire gang of traffickers she came across. At that time, countless corpses stood in front of her, and her whole body was stained red with blood. And she has no mercy. The dragon has reverse scales, and those who touch them will be angry. The phoenix also has reverse feathers. If you pull them out, you will surely burn yourself. After changing into clean clothes, the White Queen left the villa. Although Li Feng did not tell White Queen about the Rampage and Shield from the beginning to the end, it does not mean that she cannot find out through her own means. This method is the White Queen's intelligence network. Before meeting Li Feng, the White Queen was expected to be a member of the X-Men. But she didn't like being restrained, so she simply left, and secretly subdued many mutant subordinates through the mutant information obtained from the X-Men. These subordinates are all controlled by the White Queen using telepathy. As long as she says a word, everyone will die for her. So, after she found out where the Rampage mentioned by the X-Men was located through the intelligence system, she decided to solve this problem herself. At the same time, the largest nightclub in the city of Massa. Fuzu sat on an extremely soft sofa, squinting at nearly 23rd-tier female stars twisting their bodies on the stage. His eyes were still extremely gloomy. X-Men, damn X-Men. And Shield, damn it. This was the first time he had encountered such an aggrieved situation since he became the Underground Emperor of Massa City. He just wanted to cheat the richest man in Massa City with a large sum of money through some unclean means. Why is it being targeted by X-Men and Shield at the same time? Why? What is the origin of that guy named Li Feng? Half an hour ago, his men sent back all the news related to Li Feng. To sum it up in 4 words, it is unremarkable. A good-for-nothing second-rate director actually made the always arrogant runaway, and suffered a dumb loss. And for some reason, there was always a strong sense of crisis in his heart. In the past, when encountering such a difficult thing, he would personally strike and kill him directly. But now, the sixth sense in his heart has always made him afraid of something. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? A second-rate director. What a joke. This made the runaway extremely uncomfortable. Perhaps, let Angel and Griffin try again. Runaway drank the XO in the cup in one gulp, and finally couldn't hold it anymore. Just as he picked up his cell phone to make a call, the music in the box suddenly stopped, and even the lights were dimmed. Immediately afterwards, when he ran away, he raised his head and saw the scene that made him break out in cold sweat. Those third-tier stars who were still dancing just a second ago, their heads were separated from their bodies in an instant, as if they were disconnected. Dozens of streams of blood flowed like pillars, dyeing the ceiling red in an instant. Rage suddenly stood up from the sofa. He vaguely remembered that he had arranged a dozen killers to guard the door before he came. "Don't look, I've killed them all." An extremely indifferent female voice sounded in the ears of the violent. Next second, countless diamond blades appeared around Rampage, sealing his body tightly. There is no doubt that as long as he takes any action, these sharp blades will easily penetrate every blood in him. "Mutant, are you a mutant?" Cold sweat broke out on the forehead of the violent. Because the light in the box was too dim, he only saw a tall black figure vaguely in front of him, but he couldn't see his face clearly. But also as a mutant, he could easily feel that this woman's ability was countless times stronger than his own, and he could even kill himself in one breath. He didn't resist, because the White Queen didn't give him any room to resist. The moment the diamond blade emerged, telepathy locked the runaway's soul. This is the style of White Queen. In front of Li Feng, she may be an iceberg beauty that can be easily overthrown. But in front of villains like Rampage, she is no different from a killing god. "It seems that you just ran away." The White Queen sneered, with strong disdain in her beautiful eyes. "I thought you were so powerful, but I didn't expect you to be just a low-level mutant. What's your ability?" "A thin frame. If it's only this level, you won't survive 3 seconds in front of me." Hearing the words, his face became pale and gloomy. He never expected that mutant would dare to make trouble for him in Massa City. Who is he? The new underground emperor of Massa City. If it were any other time, as long as he said a word, there would be nearly hundreds of people with submachine guns blocking the entrance and exit of the entire nightclub. But now, he seems to have no chance. "Then come and try." Runaway gritted his teeth, almost oozing these words from between his teeth. The White Queen sneered, raised her finger, which was as tender as suet white jade, and slid it out of thin air. Whoosh whoosh. All diamond blades disappear in an instant. Next second, Rampage let out a sinister grin, and a layer of black armor instantly appeared all over his body, shining with a blinding black light. This is the rampant mutant ability, the outer armor formed by a total of 206 bones. White Queen saw this scene, her eyes were still cold, and she ignored it. Chapter 12 is Li Feng Guy, close black lens bracket. "Bitch, I'm going to tear you to pieces." Rampage released all the anger, like a tiger preying on prey, propped up his body, and rushed towards the White Queen. However, whoosh. A diamond blade as thick as an arm pierced Rampage's chest with ease. Rage suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, his eyes widened, his face full of disbelief, and he slowly lowered his head to look at his chest. There is a blood hole visible to the naked eye. And the diamond blade has disappeared. It's only 2 seconds. White Queen walked out of the shadows with a blank face and a voice like ice. It's you." Rampage clearly saw the face of the White Queen, and his whole face was terrified. "In the next life, stay away from a man named Li Feng." The White Queen lightly raised a finger, aiming at the violent head. "Stop being so blind." Click. Countless diamond-sharp blades visible to the naked eye pierced the violent body unreservedly. And White Queen, without even taking another look, walked out of the nightclub slowly. She didn't have any interest in wasting time, and she wasn't even worried about the runaway subordinates coming to support her. She can kill dozens of mutants of this level with one hand. What is a runaway? In the private room, One person was invincible, and blood flowed like a river. The tragic new underground emperor of Massa City ran away, without even a chance to beg for mercy, and just died in the hands of the White Queen. At the last second before his death, he widened his eyes and fixed his expression at the last moment. After a long time, two figures walked into the box. Griffin, Angel. Two mutants as powerful as Rampage. They received the news the moment the accident happened. But the White Queen's methods were too powerful and fast, and by the time they arrived, it was already too late. After entering the door, Griffin looked around, glanced at the bloody female celebrity corpse, frowned slightly, kicked away a corpse in disgust, turned to Angel and said, "Hey, look for the guy's body. It's here." Angel stretched out his hand, picked up the runaway corpse, and looked it up and down. "It's disgusting enough." Griffin sneered, took out his mobile phone from his pocket, took a video of the corpse, and sent it to an anonymous mailbox. 2 minutes later, he got a call. "Hey, boss, I warned him not to be so ostentatious, but he didn't listen." After 2 seconds of silence, a hoarse echo came from the phone. "Bring the body back, block the news during this time, and stabilize the underground forces in Massa City. Also, that guy named Li Feng, don't move, and the family of the richest man in Massa City, don't move either. If any of you dare to disobey my order, I will peel his bones out of his flesh little by little, understand?" Griffin and Angel shuddered at the same time. At the same time, after registering the company with his agent, Li Feng rushed to the next party. A fan interview session dedicated to the investors of Die Hard. As a new dark horse in the director circle, Li Feng gained a large number of young fans who love action movies through The Expendables. A large part of this depends on the outstanding performance of a dozen tough guys in The Expendables and Li Feng's narrative techniques. Even though Li Feng's international reputation is not high, in Massa City, his reputation can be said to surpass all local directors. After arriving at the destination, Li Feng walked into the recording area. This seems to be a venue specially used for filming stage variety shows, and the guest seats are already full of reporters and fans who came to interview Li Feng. Li Feng is very enthusiastic about this. After all, it is difficult for every film director to gain fans. For this reason, he carefully answered everyone's questions and revealed part of the shooting plan for Mission Impossible. The atmosphere of the whole interview scene was very enthusiastic. But after the end, Li Feng suddenly received a call from his agent. "Boss, I have found a new agent assistant. Since the new company has too many affairs, I will let her assist you in the whole process of your itinerary. You will see her soon." "Okay, I get it." After hanging up the phone, Li Feng walked to the backstage of the recording area, and when he looked up, he saw a red-haired figure walking slowly in front of him, dressed in a compact OL group, exuding a heart-thumping charm all over his body. "Mr. Li Feng, let me introduce myself. My name is Natasha Romanoff, and I am your new assistant to your agent. I will be in charge of your itinerary and shooting plan. If you need it, I can also take care of your daily life." Quote. The red-haired girl blinked her beautiful eyes with natural charm, and moved closer to Li Feng by the way. Seeing the two twin peaks that filled his field of vision approaching him, Li Feng felt his breath warm up. "This is my broker assistant. Natasha Romanoff. Black Widow. Are you right?" Li Feng felt helpless in his heart. While Natasha Romanoff is a total stunner in the Marvel Universe, he has no interest at all. With such a caring wife as the White Queen, how could he fall in love with other people at will? "Mr. Li Feng." Natasha Romanoff's voice sounded again. Li Feng came back to his senses, pretended to be calm, nodded lightly and said, "I see." He didn't intend to reveal Natasha Romanoff's identity directly, then S.H.I.E.L.D. would definitely find more ways to get close to him. For Li Feng's indifferent response, Natasha Romanoff, who has always been among men, didn't react immediately. After receiving an order from S.H.I.E.L.D. temporarily, she specially chose an OL skirt that could highlight her figure to meet Li Feng. But why does this man look into his eyes without any greed for desire? Could it be that Li Feng is gay? Natasha Romanoff was a little puzzled. What she didn't know was that the identity of S.H.I.E.L.D. agent had been completely exposed to Li Feng. New agent assistant. This kind of existence that is closest to personal secretary has always been the favorite role of agents. It's just a pity that the current Li Feng doesn't have any interest in other women for the time being. There is still a beautiful wife in the family who is still not satisfied. How can he be in the mood to take care of other women? This is also the reason why Li Feng does not intend to refuse Natasha Romanoff to approach him. He was sure that Nick Fury would not let Natasha Romanoff, an ordinary human being, do anything to his mutant, but would let her seduce him softly. Mr. Li Feng, tomorrow you will have 2 entertainment events, both of which are the investors of Die Hard. They expressed their willingness to invest in your next film. Natasha Romanoff held a stack of documents in her hand. He leaned in front of Li Feng and smiled. If you have other arrangements, you need to tell me in advance, and I will negotiate with you over there. Chapter 13 The Devil Comes. Asked for flower evaluation votes. Close black lens bracket. Glancing at Natasha Romanoff's looming scenery, Li Feng shook his head and said, I don't have any arrangements. You tell me the address tomorrow, and I'll go there by myself. I still have some private matters, so I'll leave first. I can drive to pick up. Natasha Romanoff wanted to say something, but Li Feng didn't give her a chance to continue talking at all. She stomped her feet and looked down at her majestic view, sullen. Just wait and see, Li Feng. After getting in the car, Li Feng glanced at the time on his watch. It was exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At this point, White Queen should still be in the hospital to take care of her mother. Therefore, he does not intend to go back, but intend to go meet the underground emperor of Massa City called Rampage. People don't offend me, I don't offend others. A tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. This is Li Feng's code of conduct. Unfortunately, regarding those who threatened the White Queen's life, Li Feng did not intend to let it go. As for the White Queen's rampage in the nightclub, he didn't know anything about it. He has only one goal at present, which is to solve the trouble of running away and eliminate future troubles forever. At the moment, Massa Underground Gang headquarters. Griffin and Angel summoned all their subordinates and told them that they had to leave temporarily for a period of time, and all the affairs of the gang would be taken over by them. Although the sudden news made many subordinates a little dissatisfied, after the Griffin directly used the power of the mutant to tear up a few minions in front of everyone fell silent. The most important thing for those in power is not connections, but means. After stabilizing the underground forces, Griffin and Angel will take all the property in the underground vault of the Runaway as their own. In fact, a large part of these properties are the legacy left by the previous underground emperor. Countless gold, countless cash. With such huge amounts of wealth, one can imagine how profitable the underworld in Massa City is. Griffin, what are you going to do with the tens of billions of dollars? Looking at the empty headquarters, Angel lit a cigar and asked greedily. Before getting to know Rampage, both of them were professional killers who specialized in hunting down mutant to get rewards, so there was no reason not to be tempted by this pile of cash and gold. How to deal with it? Definitely swallowed it into our own stomachs. Griffin sneered, lit a cigar for himself, and sneered, that trash who ran away is not worthy to be the underground emperor of Massa City. Now that you are slaughtered, you and I will have a chance. You mean? Angel's eyes lit up, he licked his lips, and said, to do that business we've always wanted to do. No, 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 Griffin shook his shoulders, and said a little madly, hey. That thing is outdated. We have to do something we dare not do. What's the matter? Angel was a little confused. The richest man in Massa City. Griffin narrowed his eyes, played with his cigar, and said with a sneer, if we just let him go like this, wouldn't he die in vain if he ran away? Are you kidding me? Angel grabbed his collar, his face twitched and said, the boss said that if we dare to mess around, he will peel our bones out of our flesh. What are you afraid of? Griffin's face became crazy. The boss only said not to touch that guy named Li Feng and the family of the richest man in Massa City. but he didn't say that we won't let us touch the richest man in Massa City. Okay, what are you going to do? Angel also reacted, and asked, blackmail. Or blackmail. Kidnapping directly. The Griffin sneered and said, but we don't need to show up in person. I plan to spend money to find some wandering mutants and let them do it. But Angel suddenly frowned. What if the person named Li Feng is in the same group as the person who killed the Rampage? Then kill them all together. Griffin grinned, his eyes full of arrogance. Don't be so cautious, Angel. Remember how we slaughtered those mutants who were as useless as runaways. Then get ready to act. Angel licked his lips greedily, obviously moved. I haven't slaughtered a mutant for a long time, it's been a long time. While Griffin and Angel were planning, a loud noise suddenly came over, as if it sounded from the depths of the soul. The two of them trembled. What's going on? What happened? The Griffin stood up from the sofa with a thump, because his sensitive nose sensed the strong smell of blood in the air. Problem occurs. Angel obviously sensed something was wrong. As mutants, the two had been killers for a while at the same time, so they were extremely sensitive to this bloody smell. Come on. Come on someone. Where the hell are you going? The Griffin tried to call his men. However, no one responded. In the empty headquarters, only echoes remain. At this time, a thin figure slowly walked into the huge headquarters. Surprisingly, with every step he took, cobweb-like cracks would appear on the surrounding walls and the floor under his feet. A huge amount of oppressive force permeated the surrounding air, making Griffin and Angel instantly put on the defensive. Who are you? The Griffin cursed coldly. If you dare to take another step forward, I promise I will tear you to pieces. Obviously, the Griffin was a little restless. However, this figure did not obey his words, and even every step became heavier. Boom, 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 until the figure completely came to 5 meters in front of the Griffin and Angel. The walls of the entire headquarters are already covered with cracks. Even the marble tables placed around them collapsed into pieces. Terrifying momentum. Fake, who are you? Do you know whose territory this is? The Griffin fell into rage, its eyes turned into golden balls like hawks, and its fingers turned into claws like griffins. When animals are threatened, they will unconsciously spread their wings. But soon, he froze. Because he saw the figure clearly through the light. Covered in blood. Like a demon who came out of hell. There is no doubt that it was Li Feng who came. The reason why he became like this is because before he entered the headquarters, he easily dealt with more than 30 gangsters guarding the door. These 30 or so gangsters didn't last 2 seconds in front of him. It all depends on the Steppenwolf template's void channeling ability, which can easily crush any human. It's just a pity that he is not that familiar with the application of templates, so he can't control the direction in which the blood is sprayed. Hello, who of you is called Berserk? Li Feng grinned at them and waved, kindly. Angel and the Griffin looked at each other, then suddenly arched a pair of silver wings from behind, and directly fired nearly hundreds of scale-like sharp blades. Chapter 14 It and #039. S like a Mephisto from heaven. Ask for flower evaluation votes. Close black lens bracket. Whoosh. Feather thorns pierced through the void, and came straight with a pungent bloody smell. That's it for now. Li Feng curled his lips helplessly. He originally wanted to sit down and talk kindly, talk about life with these two brothers. But now, it seems unlikely. The moment the sharp blade came in front of him, he raised his hand and waved at the air. Brush. A strange black light flashed, and all the feather scales turned into nothingness. Suddenly, a huge axe fell straight down from the top of his head like a divine soldier. Whoosh whoosh. The invisible hurricane tore away the surrounding walls, accompanied by the roar of the ancient wild wolf that caused cardiac arrest. Fuck. What the hell is this? The Griffin glanced at the looming giant axe, and his eyes were instantly burned with pain. Use all your strength and kill him quickly, or we will all die. Angel couldn't help gnashing his teeth, a look of horror flashed in his eyes. He had never seen such a powerful mutant ability. Yes. In their eyes, Li Feng is a powerful mutant. But in fact, His ability is much more terrifying than mutant. I'm going to kill you, bastard. The griffin roared suddenly, and the clothes on its upper body were instantly shattered, revealing its strong muscles, and its back became curved. Impressively a humanoid goshawk. Angel on the side naturally did not lose the wind. When his wings spread out, there was a thin crack on his forehead, from which a dazzling light shot out, illuminating his whole body. Just like a fallen angel. However, seeing this, Li Feng lightly raised his finger and pressed it down. Next second, Angel and Griffin, who were trying to fly into the air, hit the ground straight as if they had been hit hard in the back, their entire spine bent, and a mouthful of thick blood vomited out of their mouths. After less than 3 seconds, the two of them lost their fighting power in an instant. The translucent giant axe that was originally suspended in midair escaped into the void, and all the oppressive feeling disappeared completely, and it calmed down. Li Feng patted the dust on his trouser legs, walked in front of the two, lowered his head and looked at them expressionlessly. He asked, "Who, is it a runaway?" The griffin kept panting, and it took a long time for him to choke out a sentence. With blood in his mouth, he said intermittently, "Rampage. Rampage. Dead, died yesterday, was, by a mutant, killed, died." Li Feng frowned. Runaway was slaughtered. Killed by whom? Peer. Or the enemy? A pretty figure appeared in Li Feng's head. He shook his head, muttered, "Impossible," in a low voice, and said to Griffin and Angel, "Since he's dead, are you here to take his place?" "Yes, it is." Griffin struggled to endure the pain in his body. "Then, it's useless to keep you guys." Li Feng raised his hand, intending to avoid future troubles forever, lest these blind things disturb his life again. Wait. Can we talk?" Angel's pupils shrank suddenly, and there was a strong desire to survive in his tone. It is impossible to resist, and the two have completely lost their fighting ability. And such a humanoid monster, who can resist? But that doesn't mean they have no chance of surviving. As bestial mutants, their self-healing ability is powerful. If this guy could have a good talk with them, he might have a chance of surviving. Talk. How do you want to talk? Buy me with money. Or buy me with a woman. Li Feng squatted in front of the two with great interest, with a playful expression on his face. In the face of the absolute difference in strength, he is not afraid of these two guys playing tricks. As long as he wanted to, he could crush the two of them into pieces in an instant. You are Mr. Li Feng, aren't you? I've seen your photo." The griffin said with a trembling tone, "Rage once sent his killer to kidnap you and your wife, but failed. I'm here instead of violence. I apologize to you, we have nothing to do with that matter. It was a stupid decision made by violence. He is already dead, so there is a wrong and a debt. Can you let us go? I swear, as long as you let us go, we promise not to provoke you." Facing the deterrent force of absolute terror, the griffin no longer had the kind of fearless attitude it used to have. Instead, it looked like a thief caught by the police, trying to find a reason to clear himself of the crime. And then, go on. Li Feng was still expressionless, but he was unmoved in his heart. He actually didn't intend to save the lives of these two guys, let alone take them seriously. Li Feng still understands the truth that if the grass is cut but the roots are not removed, it will regenerate when the spring breeze blows. Moreover, after the death of Rampage, it must be these two mutants who took over the position of Underground Emperor in Massa City. At that time, when they regained their senses and came to seek revenge on themselves, what should they do? Angel took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and then prayed, "Sir, I can feel your strength. The two of us are nothing in front of you. Even if you kill us, what will you get? You can only get a chaotic city of Massa, and if there is no new Underground Emperor on the throne, the gangsters here will be in chaos. Countless robberies, crimes, thugs, even mutants, come here to run wild. As long as you are willing to let us go, you will be our master in the future, and we promise that similar things will not happen before. We can even help you kill all the troubles that bother you and your wife. Do you think it's okay?" Seeing that Li Feng was unmoved, the griffin quickly took over the conversation and said, "Mr. Li Feng, we know that you are a great director, and we can provide you with a filming fund of $100 million. We guarantee that the benefits obtained after you let us go will reach your film and television company in the form of an anonymous account after you let us go. Obviously, both Griffin and Angel understand that if they want to live at this time, they don't want to pretend to be pitiful, just pray to Li Feng, and Li Feng will let him go. It's about bringing out enough interests that make Li Feng's heart beat, and a clear boundary. In this world, no one will resist wealth, let alone power. Facts have proved that Griffin and Angel are still smart, and their choices are not wrong. Li Feng tried to imagine the scene of killing these two guys, and found that what they said was not wrong. Massa City can be said to be the most rampant gangster place in the entire United States. If there is no powerful underground emperor to govern and formulate rules, then this place will definitely be in chaos. Chapter 15. As long as it in #039, SU, I in #039, DB willing, seeking flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. When the lunatics in the underground world are not bound by the rules, they will inevitably show their dirty fangs unscrupulously, gnawing on the flesh and blood of those innocent people. Although Li Feng is too lazy to take care of the underground gangs in Massa City, he is not worried that any murderer with no eyesight will come to make trouble. But this place, after all, is where he lives. He didn't want to see a mess. How annoying would it be if you went shopping with your wife in the mall and gang fights would happen every now and then? Therefore, Li Feng thought about it carefully and decided to let these two guys go temporarily. He stood up and said lightly, "You two successfully convinced me. But I want you to know. In my eyes, crushing you to death is no different from crushing two ants. If you dare to trouble me again, I promise, no matter which corner you hide in, I will find you and cut off your flesh bit by bit." Hey the dog. After the words fell, Angel and Griffin fell into the ice cellar. They have heard countless sentences like this threat. But it was the only time that they felt chills all over. After leaving these few words, Li Feng stepped up, turned and left. The reason why he left threats was not because he was afraid that these two guys would dare to come to make trouble. If they really dared to do this, Li Feng would pass the Steppenwolf template without hesitation and torture them to death. He just wanted to see if he could catch that big fish. Rampage, Iceman, Angel, Griffin. It is absolutely impossible for so many mutants to appear around him, just a coincidence. After seeing the terrifying mutant who appeared out of nowhere like a Mephisto leave, the tense bodies of Angel and Griffin finally relaxed. The two looked at each other, and both saw a trace of fear in each other's eyes. From this moment on, they made up their minds at the same time that they would never provoke Li Feng, a second-rate director, again. Not only that, Griffin even intends to wipe out all the gangsters near the area where Li Feng lives, so as not to offend the god of death by people who don't have long eyes. Only by clearing the boundaries in this way can he rest assured that he can secure his position as the underground emperor of Massa City. So from another perspective, it may not be a bad thing for Li Feng to keep Angel and Griffin. At the very least, for a long time to come, he won't need to have friction with some low-level gangsters anymore. After all, in the Marvel Universe, things like gangsters have always been experienced monsters. As for the plan that Griffin and Angel came up with just now, it was obliterated in their minds before it was fully born. What are you kidding? With such a level of killing god beside the daughter of the richest man in Massa City, even if they had 100 courage, they wouldn't dare to kidnap her. Tired of living. After lying on the ground for more than half an hour, Angel and Griffin's backbones gradually recovered a little. The two got up from the ground, cleaned up the blood on their bodies, and then lay pale on the sofa, gasping for breath. "Do you want to tell the boss?" Angel asked in a low voice with his face trembling. "Are you crazy?" Griffin glared at him angrily. "Don't think you're hurt enough. If the boss knows we screwed up, he'll be even more angry. Then, how do you explain the $100 million and those brothers?" Explanation. No need to explain, man, what we have is $100 million, and we can earn it back in less than half a year. Cold sweat broke out on the forehead of Griffin, and his tone became a little weaker. He murmured, "The key is, next how should I avoid this killing god? Too strong. A mutant of this level is too powerful. Even if it was the boss standing behind the Griffin, he wasn't as terrifying." Griffin and Angel had killed dozens of Delta-level mutants, but they still had no power to fight back against Li Feng. If they weren't mutants, they were ordinary gangsters. "I'm afraid it won't last even a second." It took a long time before Griffin and Angel calmed down. The two paced out of the headquarters, then called all the remaining men and announced a message. "From now on, all gang members in Massa City will not be able to provoke that killer named Li Feng. Not to mention offending." After returning to the villa, Li Feng glanced at his watch. Exactly 6 o'clock. The dusk overhead reflects the flower scene of the manor, and everything looks peaceful and beautiful. As the matter over, a pretty figure in pajamas, like a solitary branch among flowers, came out of the living room, smiled at Li Feng, stepped forward and hugged his arm intimately. "Meet some difficult people." Li Feng rubbed her tender white forehead, and said softly, "You know, there are always people who want to get big directors to ask them to be leading actors in some way, but I don't know how much courage and background it takes to do this business." Quote. Pissed. The White Queen was rarely amused by Li Feng's words. She didn't show any blame on her expression, but instead had a sense of satisfaction waiting for her husband to come home. As for Li Feng's safety outside, she wasn't worried at all. After all, Li Feng still has the diamond watch she gave her in his hand, and if there is any fatal trouble, she will know it immediately. Then, the two walked into the living room and sat at the dining table. "Today I simmered black chicken soup for 3 hours, and a top-quality lobster that my father entrusted someone to bring from Australia. The whole process was delivered fresh, try it." After finishing speaking, the White Queen thoughtfully served Li Feng a bowl of pasta, and poured the chicken soup with a strong fragrance. Li Feng tasted it without even thinking about it, and exclaimed, "It tastes really good." White Queen smiled slightly. It seemed that only Li Feng's compliment could make her happy. "Honey, how's your father's business doing recently?" Li Feng asked while drinking the soup. "Is there anything I can do for you?" "That's not necessary." The White Queen shook her head and said, "You know, my father is a strong person, and he is responsible for all his work arrangements. Then let me ask you a question. If you are free, will you come to be the heroine in my movie?" Li Feng suddenly changed the subject, and asked with a smile, "Definitely, I definitely won't have any passionate scenes with the male lead, I am very possessive. As long as it's you, I'm willing." White Queen pursed her lips and replied, "What do you plan to do next movie?" "How about gang drama?" Li Feng casually mentioned. White Queen froze for a moment, and asked, "A gangster drama? Is it the same as The Expendables?" "No, it's not the same." Li Feng shook his head and said, "Maybe, some sci-fi elements will be added." Chapter 16 Avada Kedavra Curse Open black lens bracket Ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. "Oh." White Queen nodded half understanding, and said, "Do you think my acting skills are good?" "Acting skills?" Li Feng obviously paused. This was the first time White Queen asked such endless questions. But when he looked at the expectant eyes of the White Queen, Li Feng hesitated and said, "It's not bad." "Then do you think the audience will like it if I play the villain?" Playing the bad guy. Li Feng was dumbfounded again, and didn't answer right away. He vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the White Queen today. "Li Feng, if one day I hurt you, will you lose your temper with me?" The White Queen suddenly raised her beautiful eyes, and looked directly at Li Feng with those blue pupils. Li Feng was silent for 2 seconds, stood up and walked to the White Queen, hugged her into his arms, stroked her hair and said, "Idiot, no matter what you do, I will never say anything to you. Temper, let alone resistance to you, because from the day we got married, I swore that we would walk through every step of life together, every step." Quote. After speaking, he didn't give White Queen a chance to continue asking questions, and directly blocked her with his lips. This intimate gesture made the White Queen's face turn red with embarrassment. She tried to struggle, but to no avail. Li Feng stretched out his hands, embracing the soft waist of the White Queen. You are my wife, my closest person, and always will be. No matter what you become, I will never lose you. After saying that, Li Feng directly picked up the White Queen and walked towards the bedroom. Knowing that she couldn't refuse, the White Queen quickly closed her eyes and let Li Feng handle it. At the same time, after dealing with all of Li Feng's schedules, Natasha Romanoff finally pulled back her soul, immersed in her new role. She walked into a sealed office, her eyes became extremely cold, and she took out a small crystal panel and placed it on the table. Buzz buzz. A burst of blue light flickered, and the image of SHIELD headquarters was projected. On the other side is the deadpan SHIELD director, Nick Fury. How's it going? Asked the other party. According to the deployment, the trust of the target has been gained, but he is very cold to me, which is different from those targets I have met before. Natasha Romanoff's debriefing was cold and quick. The target he was referring to was the Li Feng he met today. The reason why I became Li Feng's manager's assistant was mainly to find out Li Feng's details, so as to get close to him and gain trust. Before this task was given, she had no idea who Li Feng was. But when she heard Captain America tell Li Feng's horror, her curiosity exploded in an instant. I told you. Nick Fury responded, don't be too impatient, this is not a problem to provoke, the purpose of my handover to you is to gain trust, not to make him more defensive against you. I understand what you mean. Natasha Romanoff said softly, according to the information, Li Feng has a wife in the Golden House, who is the daughter of the richest man in Massa City. This woman seems to be Li Feng's weakness. If necessary, I can. No, don't do something so stupid, Natasha Romanoff. Nick Fury warned earnestly. In the investigation provided by Phil Coulson, Emma was in the X-Men for a while, so there is a 90% chance that it's a mutant. Mutant. Natasha Romanoff frowned and said, could Li Feng's ability be related to X-Men? I'll take care of this. Nick Fury said lightly, you must not be hard on Li Feng without my order. SHIELD has investigated all the information on him and his wife, and it shows that Li Feng has been from. There is a long gap between her appearance and her marriage with his wife. No one knows what happened. Li Feng may have another identity, and this identity must be taken seriously. Quote. That's what got me close to him. Natasha Romanoff muttered, if Li Feng isn't interested in my beauty, you should send Agent Phil Coulson to try. What? Are you worried about ruining their relationship? Nick Fury sneered and said, or, do you think Li Feng is gay? Natasha Romanoff felt a little helpless when she heard her words being scorned by the boss of SHIELD. The reason why she said this is because Li Feng's attitude towards her today made her very unhappy. When carrying out espionage missions, those men would be full of flaws if they were teased casually by themselves. Only this guy named Li Feng, she couldn't see through. Okay, that's all for today. Nick Fury cut off the communication network. A look of fatigue flashed in Natasha Romanoff's eyes. She was thinking about what to do when she met Li Feng next. Seduce. Go to bed. Ambiguous. These. Really useful. Maybe. Try it. Since dealing with the Griffin and Angel, Li Feng basically hasn't encountered any major troubles. In order to speed up the shooting, Li Feng devoted most of his time to the preparation of the new film and television company. During this period, Mission Impossible 123 was also successfully released globally. In order to gain a better reputation, Li Feng filmed all three of them in one go. This is familiar to him who has watched countless movies. Therefore, the system also gave more rewards. The actor's self-cultivation, in The King of Comedy. The slashing skills in Young and Dangerous People in the Django. 100% standard swearing quotations in Carmen in Mong Kok. Avada Kedavra from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. These rewards are not useless to Li Feng, at least the last, Avada Kedavra, is a very useful, self-defense technique. But the most critical problem is that Li Feng is not needed at all. As soon as Massa's rampage died, and as soon as Griffin and Angel came to power, no one dared to think of him at all. What? You said it's okay to use it as a pretense. Brother, that's Avada Kedavra. For whom is it not a death? However, it is worth mentioning that during Li Feng's busy filming time, the plots of Invincible Hulk, Iron Man 1, and Deadpool have basically taken place and are in rapid progress. Hulk, the Hulk who escaped from the laboratory, disappeared into the city with the help of the military after a battle with the mutant, Abomination. The famous playboy Tony Stark has also escaped from the hands of the terrorists, and began to use Stark Industries funds to research steel armor. During this period, just like the original plot, he held a press conference and announced his identity. Chapter 17: The Mutant Who Has Lived for Thousands of Years. Close black lens bracket. This has caused a great sensation all over the world. After all, Tony does not like low-key personality and is different from all superheroes. This is also the core reason why he became the Avengers Alliance. He is a proud and conceited person, but also a person who is not willing to remain anonymous. This kind of personality is very similar to Li Feng, so the only person in the Avengers Alliance who makes him appreciate his real identity is Tony Stark. At least this guy is always at the forefront, no matter the odds, right? By the way, taking advantage of the opportunity of founding Marvel Pictures Company, Limited, Li Feng directly invested the $100 million sent by the Griffin, and made great efforts to publicize it, which attracted many investment companies. Attention! It is estimated that in a short time, as long as Li Feng releases 456 films of Mission Impossible, the company will be officially listed. At that time, Li Feng will have a bolder idea. Invite Tony Stark to make a documentary. The content is Battle of New York. At that time, his worth will soar exponentially. Every year, the dividends from the theater box office alone are enough for Li Feng to live a peaceful life without worrying about money at all. Li Feng naturally shared this news with White Queen, but the latter didn't feel anything about it at all. If Li Feng also has a father who is the richest man, he will do the same. Do you have time to go shopping with me today? At the dining table, the White Queen, wearing a faint nightgown, poured a cup of hot milk for Li Feng and asked softly. Today. Li Feng shook his head helplessly, and said, I'm afraid not today. Why? The White Queen frowned slightly, with a hint of arrogant dissatisfaction on her face. 2 days ago, my agent told me that there are several investors interested in my film and television company. Li Feng apologized, honey, I have to meet and chat with these investors, so that my film and television companies can go public faster, and then there will be more money to support you. Who wants you to raise it? White Queen glared at him, pretending to ask casually, who are the investors? Are they local in Massa City? Most of them. Li Feng didn't hide anything. After all, it really happened. There is one more. Stark Panyu Investment Company. Stark. The White Queen asked after a slight pause. That, the rich man's company on TV? Yes. Li Feng nodded and explained, Mission Impossible contains a lot of weapons for spies, and Stark Industries is also an expert in this field, so they are very interested in the movie I will make next. Talk to them. Will you meet that Tony Stark? The White Queen asked. This. I don't know. Li Feng shrugged his shoulders, probably not, after all, he is very busy. Why don't you come with me, my wife? White Queen hesitated for a while, shook his head and refused, and said, you know, I don't like crowded places, I just want to stay with you. All right. Li Feng drank the hot milk in the cup, and said. Then I'll go there by myself first. Be careful when you go to the hospital to visit your mother. Take bodyguards with you when you go out. If there is any emergency, call me and I will be there as soon as possible. Since getting married, White Queen's life has basically only two places, either taking care of her biological mother in the hospital, or waiting for Li Feng to come back at home. Apart from going out shopping with him occasionally, there is basically no extra entertainment. White Queen seems to cherish such a life of asceticism. You don't need to worry about it, hum. The White Queen snorted softly, turned around and walked into the kitchen to pack her things. Li Feng was already used to the arrogance of his little wife, so he smiled helplessly, put on his suit and turned to go out. After Li Feng left, the White Queen walked to the window of the bedroom with bare feet, looked at the scenery in the manor, looked back, and said calmly, "Come out, aren't you tired of staying like this, Mystique?" As the voice fell, a blue light flickered slightly in front of the wardrobe in the bedroom, and then a figure with purple hair and dark blue dots all over his body slowly emerged from the air. "Long time no see, Emma." Mystique walked up to the White Queen and greeted her. Magneto escaped. White Queen glanced at her lightly and asked, "Yes, you are as smart as ever." Mystique shrugged. "She asked you to come to me?" White Queen asked again. Quote ellipsis ellipsis. "You can say that." Mystique leaned on the windowsill and said, "We need your ability to fight against Professor X." White Queen sneered. As former X-Men members, White Queen and Magneto are also old acquaintances, and even had an experience of fighting side by side. Mystique has been following Magneto, and her appearance also means that Magneto has returned to the human world again, which makes White Queen have to pay attention. The reason why she withdrew from X-Men at the beginning was all because she hated the world in her heart, so she chose to join forces with Magneto. Because in some cases, she is the only one who can control or influence Professor X's mind through telepathy. With Magneto captured, she also escaped. After that, she met Li Feng and lived a normal life. Thinking of Magneto, a guy who only wants to destroy the human world, the White Queen's good mood in the morning disappeared. She likes her current life very much, and likes being carefree with Li Feng. "Every day, I only need to wait for Li Feng to come home, and then have sex with him, without worrying about anything, let alone using my mutant ability to kill people anytime, anywhere." Such a life was never imagined by White Queen. She cherishes it very much. Even in White Queen's opinion, the so-called destruction of the world is nothing compared to the happy days with Li Feng. At that time, she had just entered X-Men, rebellious and arrogant, facing the temptation of Magneto, she joined without any hesitation. But now, she clearly recognizes what she wants. Let's talk about the business. Mystique saw that the White Queen didn't take the initiative to talk, and said, "Magneto is recruiting some new followers. We found an ancient ruin in Egypt, and there is a mutant that lived for nearly 1,000 years. According to ancient records, that guy already existed during the first dynasty of ancient Egypt, and we plan to revive him. A mutant who has lived for 1,000 years. White Queen narrowed her beautiful eyes slightly, and asked, "What big trouble do you want to make?" "I don't know much." Mystique shrugged his shoulders and said, "But you should be interested in another thing. Your old opponent Dark Phoenix was also rescued from the darkness." Chapter 18 The Marvel Universe is about to wake up. Ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. Jean Grey. The White Queen frowned and said after biting her tender lips, "She also followed Magneto." "Yes." Mystique said with a touch of excitement on his face, "Have you seen her strength? It's too powerful, so powerful that Wolverine has no room to fight back in front of her." The White Queen took a deep breath and said, "I won't go back. You tell Magneto, if he wants to come and ruin my life, if he wants to ruin me, I promise to make him pay 100% of the price." "He knew you would say that." Mystique covered her mouth with a chuckle and said, "So, he decided to recruit your husband into the group." The voice just fell. Whoosh whoosh. Countless diamond blades hovered around Mystique. But the latter's body hardly stayed there, it directly merged with the air and disappeared. White Queen gritted her teeth, with a murderous look on her face. But soon, it became soft again. If Magneto really dared to attack Li Feng, she would not hesitate to release the demon in her heart. That, the god, who coexisted with her. At the same time, the land of Egypt thousands of kilometers away from the United States. Beyond one of the ancient pyramids. Magneto, wearing a helmet, and two of his men walked slowly in the desert. According to the ancient records, Vibe Woman raised her slender finger, pointed to the top of the pyramid submerged in yellow sand not far away, and said, "That guy is sealed inside this pyramids." Magneto raised his head, glanced at the camp outside the pyramids, and asked calmly, "What do these people do?" The Night Walker standing next to her flickered back and forth a few times, raised a piece of yellow sand, and said, "It should be the archaeological team who came here to investigate, from the surrounding government. If they are here, we won't be able to get in." Magneto paused for a moment, then raised his hand expressionlessly, aimed at the figures surrounding the pyramids, and gently pinched. Boom! An invisible magnetic force burst out suddenly. The lives of dozens of innocent people exploded in an instant. "Now, you can go in." Magneto sneered and quickened his pace. Behind them, the Vibe Girl and the Night Girl looked at each other, and they both saw a hint of fear in each other's eyes. "North of the United States, a certain state. Let me in, this hammer is mine." Thor, dressed in casual attire, explained to the SHIELD personnel in front of him, and kept looking inside the cordon. "Is your name written on it? Just say it's yours." The SHIELD worker sneered and ruthlessly blocked him out. "If you don't believe me, let me." Before Thor could finish his sentence, a black pistol was pressed against his head. "Go away, get away from me." Okay. Thor looked aggrieved and had no choice but to turn and leave. For a prince of Asgard, losing his powers meant losing everything. If he can't awaken Mjolnir again, he may never be able to return to Asgard in this life. What to do? Thor just cursed into the air, and suddenly there was a figure in front of him, with some mocking words. "Look, what you look like now is really desolate. Are you Loki?" Thor recognized it instantly. The guy in the suit was his damn brother. The god of mischief, Loki. "Why did you come to Earth?" Thor rushed up and grabbed him by the collar, growling, "Let Heimdall send me back, quick. Now. Immediately. Don't mess around, my dear brother." Loki pressed his hand and said with a half-smile, "What? Don't you like the environment here? This world is infinitely better than Asgard's." "Shut up." Thor gritted his teeth, "Can't you hear my order?" "Oh, come on, I really hate it when you talk to me like this." Loki's face gradually became cold, and he pushed Thor away, saying, "You are no longer qualified to talk to me now. I am the only heir of Asgard, and you are just an ordinary person who was demoted to the lower world. You." Thor took a deep breath, suppressing his temper. In terms of force, the current him is no match for Loki at all. If he really fights here, he will only lose in a mess. "Stop talking nonsense." Loki sneered, "My dear brother, I'm here to tell you that you can't go back. I'm about to sit on the throne of Asgard, and you must stay here forever." Quote. "You, what do you mean?" Thor heard the killing intent in his words, and his whole body tensed up. Next second, Loki grabbed at the side suddenly, and a dark green scepter appeared in his palm. He closed his eyes tightly and muttered a spell softly. "Destroyer, appear. I, the noble prince of Asgard, order you to slay Thor." The last word falls. Boom. A huge amount of steel monster fell from the sky. The destroyer in Thor 1 inch has officially descended on the earth. "Enjoy yourself, Thor." Loki laughed and disappeared in an instant. "This time, it's over." Looking at this Asgard metal monster, which Asgard calls the ultimate weapon, Thor turned around and ran away without the slightest hesitation. Asgard, the court of God. Loki stood in the middle of the main hall, raised the scepter in his hand, and waved lightly at the ceiling made of fairy stone. Immediately, pictures of Odin's battles against the 9 realms in ancient times appeared in front of his eyes. In the painting, there is a beautiful figure like a goddess of death, with a broken halberd sinking into the sand, brave as a warrior. "My dear sister, where on earth are you hiding? If you let your father know that you have escaped from the cage, he will be very angry, right?" He muttered to himself, but sneered, "I don't believe you can bear such a good opportunity for revenge. Kill Thor and you'll be back in Asgard, won't you? Come on, I can't wait. You kill Thor, I kill you, the throne is mine now." With Mjolnir entering the Nether, the plot of Thor 1 is also rapidly developing. It's just that what Li Feng didn't expect was that while these plots were progressing, some changes that should not belong to the original plot were quietly going on. At the moment, He was driving his Maserati across the long highway to the first floor of the Stark building in downtown New York. Chapter 19 Meeting of Professor X and Li Feng Close Black Lens Bracket. At the same time. Mutant School. Professor X's complexion suddenly sank. You said, Rampage was killed by someone. Yes, Professor. Beast reluctantly took off his glasses and said, I went to Massa City with Cyclops to inquire, and it was indeed slaughtered. Have you found out who it is? Professor X's tone became a little cold. Every time a mutant dies, there will be some reactions in his brain. But the violent death made him have no warning. This means that either the person who killed the Rampage was not a mutant at all. Or, this mutant is too powerful. Even, so that his spiritual thinking can't feel its existence at all. There is one more troublesome thing, Professor. Cyclops said in a serious tone. After Rampage died, 2 new mutants came to take over his position, Griffin and Angel, who are also like Rampage. They are members of that gang, but I heard some gossip. It is said that they were beaten into maims in less than 3 hours after taking over, and they were wiped out, along with more than 30 gangsters. So, we guess, the 2 should be the same person. Professor X fell silent after hearing this. Kill Rampage first, and then cripple Griffin and Angel. Except for an alpha-level mutant like him, he couldn't think of anyone who could do this. Emma, is that you? Professor X lowered his head and muttered to himself. There is a festival with the Rampage, and he is as powerful as him, and stays in the mutant of Massa City, only the White Queen. Or, a figure suddenly appeared in Professor X's mind. It's you. Cyclops and Beast looked at each other, not understanding what Professor X was muttering to himself. After a while, Professor X took a deep breath and said, let's go to Massa City and meet someone. Who? Li Feng. After the vehicle came to a complete stop, Li Feng walked into the first floor with the invitation from Stark Company. Since the joint premiere of Mission Impossible 123, Li Feng's fame can be said to have resounded throughout the United States overnight. After all, in the Marvel Universe, movies like this kind of spy agent are very popular. But to Li Feng's surprise, even a branch of Stark Industries was interested in becoming his investor. This is actually not surprising in the eyes of the public. After all, a so-called largest heavy industry group in the United States must have some companies investing in other industries. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, can you? But in Li Feng's eyes, there is something intriguing. The relationship between Tony Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. is definitely second only to Captain America in the entire Marvel Universe. It is true that Stark Group investing in its own film company is definitely a good thing. After all, people are not short of money. But what if S.H.I.E.L.D. made Tony do it on purpose? Li rationalized his thinking and decided not to think about it for the time being. Li Feng is used to this kind of meetings with investors. Except for some celebrities who will participate, there are not many serious business talks. In other words, participating in this kind of meeting is nothing more than talking and drinking a few glasses of red wine together. If the investor is interested, the follow-up matters will be left to the broker and the company to discuss. Fortunately, Li Feng is now considered a successful person, not to mention that he has entered the circle of celebrities. At least he has also entered the ranks of first-line directors, so here, he has a lot of power to speak. As soon as he walked in the door, a burst of discussions came into his ears. Hey, did you hear? There's been a lot of mutants messing around in the city lately. It's really lingering. I even sent my daughter abroad. I'm really afraid they will hurt us. I'm even more worried that once awakening comes, these mutants will be like crazy and rule the world. Oh, William, that's impossible, don't forget we have a government. I hope they don't eat dry food. Hearing this, Li Feng smiled, not paying attention at all. Whether it is mutant or the Avengers Alliance, they are all part of the Marvel Universe. Their existence is indeed a threat to some ordinary people. But everything has value. How could these ordinary people live in peace without them? Just as Li Feng was about to go to the VIP area to meet those investors, 2 familiar figures suddenly appeared in front of him. I saw a guy wearing black sunglasses, a blue complexion, and long hair all over his body, pushing a middle-aged man in a wheelchair slowly forward in the lobby on the first floor. Cyclops, Beast, Professor X. The appearance of these three people instantly made the field boil. These three guys, are they mutants? That guy with the blue complexion, I remember being on the news. It seems, it's a group called X-Men. Is this a good mutant, or a bad mutant? Whether it's a good guy or a bad guy, as long as it's a mutant, I'm disgusted. Stay away from them. Hearing these noisy voices, Professor X didn't take it seriously at all. He just looked around blankly, as if he was looking for something. But the Cyclops behind him, think otherwise. If the law allowed it, I would take off my glasses without hesitation and burn these guys to ashes. Cyclops lowered his voice and complained to Beast beside him with a cold look in his eyes. With the frequent awakening of mutant, the entire United States has a great dislike for this group, as if they are like rats living in the sewer. This is also normal. After all, the Battle of New York has not yet happened, and mutant can be said to be the most feared existence in the world today by ordinary humans. This is the case in every society where the jungle preys on the jungle. Whoever holds great power will be isolated and resisted by the collective. Calm down, Laser. This is SHIELD territory, and if you do this, I promise you won't be able to leave this building. Beast pushed his glasses. The calmness and composure on his face didn't fit his appearance. Without waiting for Cyclops to reply, he lowered his head, looked at Professor X and said, "Did you find that person?" "Professor. He's walking towards me." Professor X grinned, smiled slightly at Li Feng standing in front of him, and nodded. "Mr. Li Feng, nice to meet you, my name is Charles. I like your mission. Impossible 123 very much. The leading actors in it are really unforgettable. I heard that Mr. Li Feng has recently established a new company, and plans to shoot some blockbuster films with sci-fi elements in the next time. I am very interested in this." Chapter 20 The Horror of Spiritual Power. Ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. You should know I'm mutant. I thought I could be of some help to you. Interested in talking. Smart people don't like to talk nonsense. So Professor X, omitting most of the prologue, stretched out his skinny right hand. Looking at this middle-aged man with a kind face and wisdom in his eyes, Li Feng was unmoved. He didn't know the purpose of Professor X's coming here, and he didn't know that Professor X had already become curious about his identity. Compared with SHIELD, the mutant group should make him more cautious. After all, the person standing in front of him is an alpha-level mutant. "Mr. Li Feng, maybe we can change to a convenient place to talk." Seeing that Li Feng didn't respond, Professor X withdrew his hand and smiled calmly. "Let's just say it here, I'm short on time." Li Feng crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, tasting the red wine lightly. "All right." Professor X straightened his mind and said softly, "Mr. Li Feng, your wife Emma and I are old acquaintances." Li Feng's elbow snapped. "The reason for disclosing this is to tell you that I already know something about the underground gang in Massa City." Professor X observed Li Feng's change, and deliberately lied, "You did it, right?" Li Feng's face gradually turned cold. He didn't know why Professor X suddenly mentioned this. As he put the glass on the table, Professor X's eyes froze suddenly. Whoosh! A violent and stinging mental thought spewed out from the depths of Professor X's brain like a cocoon, and turned into invisible needles, wrapping towards Li Feng's brain. Next second, Li Feng's complexion changed drastically, and the veins on his forehead popped out. But this change only appeared for a second before he regained his composure. "But the Professor X in front of me is not so comfortable." His entire face became extremely pale, and his heart felt like it had been bitten back, and there was a severe pain. The spiritual invasion was actually rebounded. Professor X's heart suddenly trembled. At this moment, he suddenly felt darkness before his eyes. Immediately afterwards, a giant black figure standing in the void, nearly 8 feet tall, appeared out of thin air. With purple-red wolf-like eyes, it swung the huge axe in its hand, and slashed down at him. Hiss. Professor X woke up suddenly and took a breath. Professor, what's the matter with you? Beast sensed something was wrong, bent his waist and asked. Professor X ignored him, but looked at Li Feng with a terrifying and incredible look. Just now, he tried to use his spiritual power to forcibly invade Li Feng's thinking and read his memory. But not only did he fail, he was expelled by an even more terrifying force. He can clearly feel that this power does not belong to this world. More, not of mutant. Professor X usually does things like mind intrusion, and it can basically be 100% successful. Even if the other party noticed something after the end, there was nothing he could do about it. But Li Feng, it's so weird. This made him feel an unprecedented fear. Li Feng, who understood the reason, also reacted at the moment. His face was cold, and he stared at Professor X with anger in his eyes, and asked, "Is this why you came to me?" After saying this, a little cold sweat oozes from his back. Because the memories contained in Li Feng's brain are not only the secrets of the Marvel Universe. Besides, through these secrets are top secrets that cannot be known by others. But just now, Professor X actually tried to invade his mind. Since coming to this world, no one dared to do this to him. Without the Steppenwolf template, Li Feng's secrets would be fully revealed to Professor X. At that time, he has only one choice. Kill this old guy in public. And now, he wants to see how Professor X explains it. Sorry, Mr. Li Feng. Professor X didn't mean to quibble at all, obviously he also realized the troubles of the matter. But he still hasn't recovered from the horror just now. How did Li Feng do it? Could it be that he is an Omega-level mutant stronger than himself? Professor X couldn't understand this question, and didn't have the time to think about it. Because he already clearly felt a chilling killing intent in the air. Sorry, I'm really sorry, Mr. Li Feng, this was not my intention. I guess I should tell you that one of my mutant abilities is telepathy. Sometimes, it gets out of control, you know what I mean. I swear on my personality, I definitely didn't mean to. Professor X apologized to Li Feng with a bitter face. Oh, is it so? Li Feng took a step forward and approached Professor X. Cyclops and Beast in front of them stood up and stood in front of the latter in an instant. Don't mess around, I warn you. Beast stared into Li Feng's eyes, with a defensive face. Li Feng sneered, looked down at Professor X condescendingly, leaned close to his ear, and whispered word by word, Charles, I know you, I know what you are going to do, and I also know who are around you. I tell you, no one has ever dared to offend me like this. You are the first, and I promise you will pay the corresponding price. But you can be lucky for a while, at least not now. After finishing speaking, Li Feng straightened his back, straightened his collar, turned and walked into the VIP room. There was no kindness in his tone. In other words, what would have happened if Li Feng hadn't detected Professor X's psychic powers? So, there is no room for mercy. If it weren't for the crowds here, Li Feng would definitely use his own means to let Professor X experience what real terror is. Previously, the Steppenwolf's appearance in the opponent's mental thinking was entirely the result of passive defense. The Marvel Universe is full of unknown dangers, and most superheroes have their own selfishness, and it can even be said that there are no absolute good people at all. If Li Feng is just an ordinary director without a system or any special abilities, how should he face these insidious methods? The reason why mutant is resisted and avoided by most humans is not the fault of humans, but their own problems. Relying on the super ability brought by the X gene, it is completely normal to think that it is above ordinary humans, and then do some self-righteous things. Whether it's people from the X-Men side or Magneto's side, they are all doing such evil. Chapter 21 Tony Stark and Hash-039's satire open black lens bracket ask for flower comments, close black lens bracket. If these mutants, knowing that they are different from other humans, choose to adapt to their own power instead of showing it to outsiders, the result will definitely be different. Originally, Li Feng still had some affection for Professor X in his heart, but after this incident, he almost lost all affection. If it weren't for the crowds here, Li Feng would not let him go. Anyone who dares to covet the secrets in his heart will die without regret. Looking at Li Feng with an indifferent expression, Professor X had a little cold sweat on his forehead. He didn't think about it. Didn't expect it to turn out like this. The reason why he came to this place was simply to meet Li Feng and see if he could make his mutant induction work. But now that the goal has been achieved, even bigger troubles are coming. Who would have thought that there was such a terrifying demon hidden in Li Feng's body? This is completely outside the scope of mutant. Professor X doesn't like to make enemies with this kind of guy, because with his ability, he can't compete with him at all. Unless a haughty and cold figure appeared in Professor X's mind. Let Dark Phoenix kill Li Feng. As soon as this thought appeared, Professor X's body tensed up. He watched Li Feng gradually disappear into the crowd, and finally gave up the idea of continuing to explain. Professor, this guy dares to threaten you, he's getting impatient. Cyclops said with a cold face. He didn't know what happened at all, but he heard Li Feng's threatening words clearly. You are not his opponent, Laser. Professor X shook his head lightly, and said, all of us are not his opponent, because I used mental power to try to invade his mind just now, but an even more terrifying mental power, it swallowed all my strength. This is a scene I have never seen before. I'm afraid he's not a mutant. Hearing this, the expressions of Cyclops and Beast became weird. Not a mutant. Where did he get his strength? You can't provoke him without my order. Professor X sighed and said, I'm also to blame for this. If it wasn't so abrupt, maybe he would choose to join the X-Men. Today's goal is achieved. But Liang Zi also formed a knot. Let's go. Professor X waved his hand, as if he suddenly remembered something, and said, also, pay attention to Magneto. If they are after Li Feng, remember to remind Emma. Cyclops and Beast nodded simultaneously. After entering the VIP room, Li Feng forgot what happened just now. The contact with Professor X made him feel a little bit worse. After all, the mutant group is too uncontrollable, and he doesn't want to fall into this swamp. Oh, Mr. Li Feng, you are finally here. While he was thinking, a familiar voice suddenly came from his ear. Li Feng raised his head subconsciously, and saw Natasha Romanoff in an OL skirt walking towards him. Please follow me, Mr. Li Feng. Let me introduce you to the major shareholder of this investor. Tony Stark. Li Feng hesitated for a while, but he didn't expect Tony Stark to come. He followed in the footsteps of Natasha Romanoff, and walked to Tony Stark, who was surrounded by a group of high society rich women not far away. Ahem. Natasha Romanoff coughed and shouted, Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark. Holding the wine glass, Tony Stark obviously paused, glanced at Natasha Romanoff, saw her charming figure, squeezed out of the crowd of women with a smile, and said, Beautiful lady, what can I do for you? Served. Director Li Feng is here. Natasha Romanoff smiled slightly at Tony Stark, pointed to Li Feng behind him, and said, Do you want to chat with him? Oh, let me think about it. Tony Stark looked Li Feng up and down, his brows were slightly furrowed, and then relaxed, as if considering in his memory. He asked, You. I'm the director of Mission Impossible 123. Li Feng grinned. He couldn't see that Tony Stark was deliberately pretending not to know him. Oh, I remembered. Tony Stark laughed loudly, hugged Li Feng, and said, I remember you. Your spy movie was so good, it completely met my childhood expectations. I think that's why you're here, right? Don't get me wrong, I don't mean anything, I just want to have a brief chat with you. What is your next movie going to be? If I'm satisfied after listening to it, maybe I can give you more. The investment is on the original basis. Arrogant as always. Li Feng will definitely not lose his composure in front of Tony Stark, let alone get annoyed by his arrogant tone. After all, this is Tony's innate personality. He smiled and said, It's not convenient to disclose. Hearing this, Tony Stark's expression obviously turned cold, but he quickly returned to his smile, put his arm around Li Feng's shoulders, and said, "Hey, buddy, I have an employee who likes your movie very much, can I asking you for an autograph for her? If I don't, she'll probably get mad at me because her nickname is Pepper." "Yes, no problem." Li Feng readily agreed. The two clinked glasses at the wine table and talked for a while, and soon Tony Stark was infected by the charm of Li Feng's language, and the two became acquainted inadvertently. After Tony learned that his life might be preserved by Li Feng in the form of a documentary, his tone was obviously much happier. As a superhero, being respected or admired is a great thing. Obviously, Tony didn't know that the reason why Li Feng didn't resist courting him was purely to use him to make money. Stark Industries, Iron Man himself. Once these two titles are shown in film and television, Li Feng can create a particularly terrifying income. No one likes to have trouble with money, right? After talking for a few more words, Li Feng and Tony exchanged contact information and confirmed the investment. The initial amount was 50 million. The money is not much, but it is also not little, enough for Li Feng to do many things. After Tony left, Li Feng chatted with several local investors, and the results were very satisfactory. He glanced at the time, and when he was about to go back, Natasha Romanoff suddenly wrapped his shoulders with her tender white arms. "I'm in a bit of trouble, boss." "Trouble?" Li Feng frowned, not knowing what tricks she was up to, so he asked, "What trouble?" Natasha Romanoff's face was obviously a little nervous, and she stretched out her hand to deliberately press the corner of her slit skirt, leaned close to Li Feng's ear, and whispered warmly, "When I entered the door just now, there were some hooligans in the alley outside. Staring at me, can you send me home? I'm afraid to me." Chapter 22. Who is controlling all this? Ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. She didn't finish the sentence, but Li Feng understood the meaning instantly. He sneered. "What are you kidding? SHIELD 10th level agent, how many hooligans would he be afraid of? Help me, will you?" Natasha Romanoff said in a low voice with a blush on her face, "Boss, I'm scared." Seeing such a mature beauty showing weakness like this, an ordinary person would probably not be able to stand it long ago. But Li Feng turned a deaf ear to it, and instead said calmly, "I'll take you out, and I'll take a taxi home by myself." Okay. Another look of disappointment flashed in Natasha Romanoff's eyes. It seems that this man is really soft and hard. But the words have been said, and she does not intend to take them back. The two walked out of the Stark building together and came to the side of the road. There are office workers busy going to and from get off work everywhere, and there are no hooligans at all. Just as Li Feng hesitated whether to expose this woman's tricks, a cold wind suddenly came from the alley behind him. "Ah!" Natasha Romanoff's scream is heard. Li Feng turned around subconsciously, and saw a few guys wearing hats covering Natasha Romanoff's mouth with a black cloth, and dragging her enchanting body into the shadows. Help! Help! A faint cry for help came from the darkness. Li Feng stood still for 2 seconds, then put his hands in his pockets, slowly hummed and turned to leave. Hero to save beauty. Draw your sword to help. This kind of trick is simply too old-fashioned. He dismissed them all. But he had only taken 2 steps when he stopped suddenly and looked at the intersection not far away. There seemed to be a translucent mummy figure that looked like a skeleton, just staring at him. Apocalypse. Li Feng's pupils shrank suddenly. After only a second, that figure disappeared. What's going on? Shouldn't this node Apocalypse still be lying in the pyramids? The plot of X-Men hasn't been fully developed yet, and that guy was released. No, something's wrong. This isn't normal Marvel Universe wake-up time. Someone must have disturbed the order. Li Feng's face gradually darkened. Yes. He finally felt some threat. Normally speaking, after the plot of X-Men Apocalypse, it will be Wolverine 3. Desperate War. At that time, the entire X-Men group will be destroyed by the terrorist power of Dark Phoenix, and Wolverine will also fall into death because of this. But now, before the game between Magneto and Professor X has officially taken place, Apocalypse has been released and is targeting Li Feng. This means that the plot of X-Men has been completely messed up. Definitely, it's not this that makes Li Feng feel threatened. Rather, the entire Marvel Universe. What if the plot of the Avengers Alliance does not break out according to the original time point? What if that guy who looked like a purple potato came to Earth early before the Avengers Alliance was fully established? At that time, everything will be even worse. So, who exactly is manipulating all this? Changing all this? Li Feng took a deep breath, calmed down, pulled out his hands in his pockets, and walked into the alley where Natasha Romanoff was dragged away. The whimpering still came from the darkness. Natasha Romanoff was being tied up in midair by a blue light braid, her entire body was suspended, and even her arms were squeezed, without any resistance to ability. At the same time, her face was bitter, as if she was facing suffocation. And in the alley, there are 3 mutants with blue eyes standing. Leave far away. Li Feng walked under the shadow, half of his face was reflected by the lights on the side of the road, and half of his face was wrapped in darkness. Just like that, he uttered 3 words lightly. Are you looking for death? Don't fucking hinder me from playing with chicks. One of the mutants grinned grimly, but as soon as he finished speaking, his entire body was reduced to ashes. The other 2 mutants showed panic and were about to run away when a blue light flashed in their eyes, and then they rushed towards Li Feng without any hesitation. 2 seconds later, Natasha Romanoff's limp body fell heavily to the ground. And the 3 mutants, without exception, all turned into ashes and drifted away with the wind. It's not very gentlemanly. Natasha Romanoff got up from the ground, patted the dust on her skirt, and looked at Li Feng helplessly. Come on, stay away from me. Li Feng took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it lightly, leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Also, go back and tell your superior, Natasha Romanoff. My bottom line is not as low as you think. If you SHIELD still don't give up the temptation, I will be very angry. The consequences of being angry, you saw it just now, didn't you? When Natasha Romanoff heard this, the panicked expression gradually returned to calm. In fact, meeting 3 mutants is not a hopeless situation for a level 10 agent. But since Li Feng saw through it, there was no need to continue to pretend to be pitiful. You are much stronger than I thought. Natasha Romanoff tidied up her clothes, looked into Li Feng's eyes, and said, I'm very interested in you. Do you think I'm the kind of person who can't walk when I see a woman? Li Feng sneered and asked, go back and tell Nick Fury, I know what he wants to do, but I'm not interested in it. I have a family, a career, and a wife who is more attractive than you, and I should be responsible for this, not joining some SHIELD. Why would you know this? Natasha Romanoff asked puzzled, SHIELD. And Captain America or something? Li Feng smiled, threw the half-remained cigarette on the ground and stamped it out, left after saying a word. Be smart, the world is changing. Watching Li Feng gradually disappearing into the street, Natasha Romanoff fell into deep thought. The world is going to change. This sentence. What means? Playing tricks. Natasha Romanoff took a deep breath. Although she had some appreciation for Li Feng, years of agent training allowed him to easily control his emotions, so Li Feng's previous heroic rescue did not leave her much deep impression. All of this is just her task. After the meeting with investors came to an end, Li Feng also returned to a normal life. SHIELD didn't continue to send people to bother him, so he put more energy into making movies. This state made him famous in the upper class of Massa City very quickly, and even vaguely had a momentum of surpassing the reputation of the richest man in Massa City. For the old man who claims to be self-made, this is not something that can be easily accepted. Chapter 23 talked to him in person, seeking flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. Massa City, top floor of the World Trade Center. The White Queen's father, Winston, was looking at the tall black man in a leather jacket with trepidation. He took a deep breath and explained, listen, I didn't know you were from SHIELD, but I did what you said. I made all the Film and Television Association members in Massa reject my son-in-law cooperation, but I can't control the people in New York. The young man named Stark Industry has brought him a lot of contacts. If you want to settle accounts with me because of this matter, it would be too irrational. Is this all you can do? The black man was Nick Fury. With his hands behind his back, he calmly said, "Is there no other way?" "Oh, God." Winston couldn't help sighing, and said, "I'm just the richest man in Massa City. There are many people richer than me in this world. My connections are very important to Li Feng." Said, "It has no effect. If I forcefully use some unclean means, I will only get a mess, and even make my daughter hate me even more." Quote, "Enough." Nick Fury raised his hand to interrupt him, and said, "You don't need to worry about this matter. I came here to understand why your current wife imprisoned your daughter 8 years ago." This. Winston's face became ugly. It was a secret, he didn't know whether to say it or not. S.H.I.E.L.D. has the ability to be responsible for the answers. If you don't cooperate, the following chat will not be so pleasant. The toughest in the world. Quote, "Okay." Winston sat on the chair and sighed. "It's like this, Hazel, Emma's biological mother, originally had a mental illness, and when she was pregnant with Emma, her condition became more serious. I had to choose to send her to a mental hospital for treatment. For this reason, I arranged many well-known psychiatrists and obstetricians to provide her with excellent treatment plans and protect the child in her womb. Until the day when Emma was born, the entire hospital ward was completely blacked out like a ghost, and then there was a deafening cry in the ward, and several doctors in charge of delivering the baby were in a strange state within just a dozen seconds. Die. In order to cover up this matter, I used my contacts to immediately block the news, even bought the entire hospital and concealed all the details." Quote, "So, after your daughter was born, you married your second wife in order to protect your reputation, but because this woman was too utilitarian, she often beat Emma and even abused Emma, which caused Emma's mutant gene awakening, so she was released. Your second wife is locked up, right?" Nick Fury sneered and continued, "You really are not a qualified father to ignore this." Winston fell silent and made no reply. For Emma, his father is indeed unqualified. So from childhood to adulthood, he would follow Emma's will. She wanted to do anything, even bad things, and he would sneak around. But this also created another character of White Queen. You have inquired about everything you want to inquire, so go away. Winston wiped his face with his hands and said, "The mutants in the whole world are waking up one after another." Nick Fury turned around and said back, "Watch your daughter and don't let her run around, otherwise I don't guarantee that S.H.I.E.L.D. will treat her as an enemy." After leaving the building, Nick Fury glanced at Natasha Romanoff, who was waiting for him at the door, raised his eyes and asked, "Failed?" "Well, he knows my identity." Natasha Romanoff nodded helplessly and said. Nick Fury waved his hand and said, "What else did he say?" "Tell me." Natasha Romanoff said exactly what Li Feng threatened. "The world, is it going to change?" Nick Fury frowned, and muttered, "What does this sentence mean?" "Director, I think what you should be most concerned about is not this." Natasha Romanoff said with a serious expression, "I saw Li Feng's killing method in the alley. It was simply too powerful. It was a scene I had never seen before. With just a wave of his hand, the 3 mutants were reduced to ashes. An existence of this level should be immediately classified as a high danger alert level by S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury was silent for 2 seconds, nodded slightly, and said, "I understand your concerns, Natasha Romanoff. We S.H.I.E.L.D. must not just ignore an uncontrollable danger, but I always feel that what Li Feng knows too much, too mysterious, we can't just fall out with him." "Then what do you want?" "He is a guy who doesn't eat oil and salt, and doesn't eat soft and hard things." Natasha Romanoff crossed his arms and said helplessly, "I'll go to his house and talk to him in person." Nick Fury turned around, got into the car, and asked, "Do you want to come together? Let's drive to Massa City." Quote ellipsis. "No, if his wife gets it wrong, he might kill me." Natasha Romanoff shrugged and turned to leave. Nick Fury smiled helplessly when he heard the words, it seems that Li Feng said something that made Natasha Romanoff unhappy. As usual, after returning to his villa in Massa from New York City, Li Feng took a vacation for himself. With Mission Impossible 456 in theaters, the next thing he has to do is to sit and wait for the screening period to end and collect the money. As for other filming, don't worry about it. He has a very bold plan in his mind, which can increase his worth thousands of times, so he has to take it step by step to ensure that there will be no omissions in all the processes. Definitely, a large part of the reason is to accompany my wife, White Queen. Born in the Marvel Universe, you don't need to be a superhero to save the world, let alone deal with departments like S.H.I.E.L.D., or even worry about making a living. This is something Li Feng never thought about. Compared with sitting in a rental house a few months ago and being smashed by the landlord to demand rent, life now is simply heaven. Why would he have nothing to do to sacrifice himself for those innocent human beings? No need. Really unnecessary. Some time ago, after Mission Impossible 123 hit the box office, he bought a private jet almost without hesitation, planning to fly around the world with White Queen during his vacation. It's not such a thing to be bored in the house every day, is it? Chapter 24. Non-heterogeneous mutant open black lens bracket. Ask for flower evaluation tickets, close black lens bracket. Thinking of this, Li Feng, who was sitting on the sofa, giggled, walked directly into the kitchen, and embraced the White Queen who was cooking. The White Queen glared at him, trying to struggle. Just when the White Queen's face was flushed, the doorbell at the door of the villa rang suddenly. The White Queen gently pushed Li Feng away, blushing, and said, "A guest is here, go and have a look." All right. Li Feng scratched the back of his head helplessly, had no choice but to suppress the anger in his heart, and walked out of the living room. When he saw Nick Fury's figure through the garden in the villa, his face darkened. Someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. again. This time it's still the director. Mr. Li Feng, I'm very glad. Nick Fury was smiling, and just about to reach out his hand, he was interrupted directly by Li Feng. You know, I warned your subordinates. Li Feng raised two fingers, sneered, and said, twice more, but you didn't listen. What do you expect? I didn't come to you this time to recruit you. Nick Fury seemed to have thought about his words a long time ago. He raised his finger and pointed behind him. Look, I didn't bring anyone, including my best man. Really? Li Feng sneered, raised his hand casually, and squeezed the void on the right outside the villa. Whoosh! A figure in a black suit was caught in an instant and fell to the ground hard. I still have to eat my wife's cooking, so I won't accompany you. Li Feng pouted, turned around and said, "Wait." Nick Fury had a slightly embarrassed expression on his face, but he quickly stopped him and said calmly, "Li Feng, you are very powerful, but your strength is not unique to me, S.H.I.E.L.D." Faced with such strong words, Li Feng's expression was a little strange. Threatening Lao Su again. Why is everyone in the Marvel world so self-righteous? I have said many times not to provoke myself, why didn't I listen? So your Li Feng's ability, in my eyes, is not necessary to be recruited. Nick Fury crossed his arms, stared at Li Feng, and said coldly, you have to know that there is no powerful person in this world who can resist a country, and I happen to be in control of the security of a country's politicians. In other words, I can use the power of the country against anyone. You wouldn't want someone like me to be an enemy, would you? Apparently, Nick Fury already knew Li Feng's character, and knew that he was a guy who didn't get into anything, so he didn't intend to play tricks, but directly moved out his own chips. After all, the strength Li Feng displayed in front of S.H.I.E.L.D. was not enough to scare him. That's why he dared to come to the door so boldly, and then said these words. But in fact, Nick Fury doesn't yet know what's going on in the underworld of Massa City. If he had witnessed the giant axe falling from the sky with his own eyes, he probably wouldn't be so bold. Hearing Nick Fury speak in such a tone, Li Feng couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Do you really think of yourself as the leader of the United States? Threatening yourself with the power of a country? As expected of S.H.I.E.L.D. If it wasn't Nick Fury standing here today, but another unremarkable member of S.H.I.E.L.D., then Li Feng would crush him to pieces without any hesitation. But the survival of Nick Fury is the top priority for the entire Marvel world. In addition, Li Feng didn't want to make a mess, so he simply said indifferently, "I'll give you 5 minutes, within 5 minutes, finish what you want to say, and after that, I don't want to see any S.H.I.E.L.D. people appear in front of me. Don't even think about me joining S.H.I.E.L.D., I've already said the reason, and I won't say it a second time." Quote. He had no intention of doing Nick Fury any favors. Because he didn't want to join S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. It won't be long before he will become the most famous director in the entire United States, regardless of wealth or connections. It is unimaginable. And Angson lives her own life at home. Isn't it more comfortable than going out to fight with superhero? If it wasn't for S.H.I.E.L.D. who knew how to be careful and didn't disturb his life too much, I'm afraid he would have broken into S.H.I.E.L.D. by now and smashed it. 5 minutes. Enough. Nick Fury smiled, took off his sunglasses, and said, "The mutants you killed in the alley were all non-exotic mutants. Do you know what they are?" Non-exotic mutant. Li Feng said flatly, "I've never heard of it." The so-called non-heterogeneous mutants are the species that have transitioned from humans to mutants in some way. Nick Fury said seriously, "They are human beings, but they have the power of mutants through the infusion of certain powers, but in doing so the cost will cause the cells in their bodies to mutate and self-phagocytize. Generally speaking, the modified non-heterogeneous mutants will not survive a week." Quote. Li Feng frowned, but soon relaxed, and said calmly, "Oh, it's none of my business. Don't you think that there are suddenly more mutants around you?" Nick Fury leaned on the wall with one hand, approached Li Feng's face, and said, "Masa City is the hardest hit area, and the main target of the hardest hit area is you." Nick Fury noticed Li Feng's micro-expression, so he didn't make any excuses anymore, and directly stated the key points of his speech. "The main target is me." Upon hearing this sentence, Li Feng's eyes became serious. Combined with the apocalypse I saw not long ago, he seemed to understand something. There must have been some changes in the time and space of the Marvel Universe, resulting in people who should not be in this timeline. So, what is the reason for this result? Li Feng began to ponder. Is it because of my own appearance? Or, that guy who looks like a purple potato has already started to lay out on the earth? Li Feng kept Nick Fury's words in mind. He didn't want his life and growth path to be destroyed, and with his current ability, it would be a strenuous task to deal with those big bosses who rushed over from the universe. Li Feng, you have to pay attention. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, "I want to tell you something. I hope you don't get angry. Your wife, Emma, used to be a member of the X-Men. She is also a member of the Magneto camp. Her identity is definitely not as simple as you see on the surface. I suspect that the reason why there are so many non-exotic mutants in Masa City is largely related to her." Chapter 25 Magneto and H039's Conspiracy Close Black Lens Bracket. "Is this why you came to me?" Li Feng sneered at this, and asked, "You want me to help you deal with my wife?" "No, that's not what I meant." Nick Fury frowned and shook his head, noticing the killing intent rising around him, and said, "You should have seen Professor X, but you must have never seen Magneto, have you?" "Oh, who is it?" Li Feng asked, pretending to be unfamiliar and indifferent. "He's a complete villain," Nick Fury explained. "He's also one of the strongest heretics in mutant. He can manipulate anything related to metal in the world, including lead in humans. The emergence of non-exotic mutants, to a large extent has something to do with him, and now it is basically certain that you and your wife have been targeted by Magneto. If he wants to kill you, it is no different from trampling an ant to death." After speaking, Nick Fury stared at Li Feng with a scrutinizing gaze, hoping that he would show a little fear or apprehension. However, hearing this, Li Feng's expression did not change, but there was a sneer in his eyes. "Magneto, stomping on me is the same as stomping on an ant." Li Feng couldn't help but want to laugh. If Nick Fury had said the word Thanos, Li Feng might have tensed up because of it. But unfortunately, he said, "Magneto, a mutant. Not long ago, Li Feng just exterminated a few mutants, which is no different from trampling an ant to death. Even an alpha-level mutant is nothing in front of him. If Magneto is really so short-sighted that he wants to bring someone to trouble him, just squeeze it to death with one hand. Why nonsense? What do you mean by that? Nick Fury was taken aback by Li Feng's reaction. Why didn't this guy panic at all when he heard the news? Magneto is listed as an 8th-level dangerous person by S.H.I.E.L.D. Before the Avengers fully awakened, any alpha-level mutant was definitely a thorn in S.H.I.E.L.D's side, and it was the kind of thorn in the side who would rather kill by mistake than let it go. In addition, mutants have been rampant in the United States for nearly 10 years, and there is a vague trend in the world to resist the so-called mutants. Even most media and governments believe that mutants will eventually start war on ordinary humans, especially the one who has just been Magneto, who was locked up and escaped, is a terrible threat to human beings. Therefore, S.H.I.E.L.D. will have absolute defense against mutant. In the past, Nick Fury found those ordinary people, or famous businessmen, political leaders, and told them when they were targeted by mutant. Those people, without exception, will panic, then pray to the S.H.I.E.L.D. for protection, and will pay any price for it. This is the most normal reaction, right? And look at this guy named Li Feng. Not only is he not afraid, but he also has an aura of, let that Magneto come to me for a one-on-one fight if you have the guts. If Nick Fury hadn't thoroughly investigated Li Feng's identity, he would have even wondered if this guy was in the same gang as Magneto, and he wasn't afraid of the other party making trouble at all. But apparently, not so. Even Nick Fury faintly felt that in Li Feng's tone, there was a sense of expecting some friction or collision with Magneto. Could it be that Li Feng isn't afraid of Magneto at all? Or his ability has surpassed Magneto? Thinking of this, Nick Fury subconsciously shook his palms. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., the only 11th level agent, he has experienced more stories than his own age. Li Feng at the moment's reaction at the moment, from a psychological point of view, is completely fearless. This is normal, because in order to avoid being approached by S.H.I.E.L.D., Li Feng does not intend to keep hiding his identity and pretending to be a fool. It seems that you are not worried. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, I was worrying too much. No, no, no. Li Feng waved his hands and asked curiously, you have to tell me, why am I being targeted by Magneto, and why am I still the main target? In fact, Li Feng is not worried about being targeted by anyone. He is just afraid of trouble. Afraid of trouble to come to the door. But he is not afraid to solve troubles. As a senior Marvel fan, this mentality must exist. After all, in this universe, there are so many dirty things happening in the corners every day, and some of them will always spread to Li Feng, the Traveler. It's just that he wanted to find out why. Logically speaking, since I have no fame and status, how could I be targeted by the mutant group? What they should do more is not to disturb the world. I don't know about that either. Nick Fury shook his head and said, after all, I'm not the one being targeted. But I can tell you some of my guesses. Li Feng waved his hand, motioning for him to continue talking. I received news from East Africa. Nick Fury took a deep breath, and said, Magneto showed up there and killed an entire archaeological team, and there are some followers around him or, they, are all mutants that appeared with your wife. You mean, Magneto wants to take Emma away from me? Li Feng's expression suddenly turned cold. If anyone dared to take the White Queen away from him, he would never treat him calmly. After all, he has never tried to use the full body of the Steppenwolf template. This is speculation, don't get excited. Nick Fury felt the murderous intent in the air, and some cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He calmly said, secondly, it is Emma's father, the richest man in Massa City. Hearing this, Li Feng frowned even deeper. Yes, you must have guessed it. Nick Fury said, the reason why Massa City is the first place to mess up in the United States is because it is the city with the most mutants. If Magneto wants to mess up the whole world, he must gain prestige, or support, and the richest man in Massa City happens to be the most suitable candidate, because in another half a year, he will be the mayor of Massa City, and if he can openly support the mutant reform. Nick Fury didn't go on. In the SHIELD profile, Magneto is a very ambitious man. He doesn't want to destroy human beings simply through power, but wants to make mutant status surpass that of ordinary human beings and surpass this world through some way. Therefore, obtaining the support of Big Shot is an important link. The richest man in Massa City is the most suitable candidate. Chapter 26. Emma and Hash039's dual personality, ask for flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. What's more, this guy is rich enough to support all the mutants. As long as Magneto can get the richest man in Massa, this place will completely fall into mutants' hometown. Such a grand goal will inevitably require a huge layout. You mean, Magneto wants to control Emma through me, and further control the richest man in Massa City? Li Feng frowned, grasping the crux of the problem instantly. That's right. Nick Fury nodded, it's the way Magneto does things best. Even in the Marvel Universe, there is no shortage of villains with both strategy and power. Magneto is one of them. Unlike most impulsive people who only know how to act recklessly. Why are you the main target? Because Emma will only listen to Magneto if she controls you. In this way, the richest man in Massa City can only use his own reputation to squander it for the mutant gang. Once the city of Massa falls to mutants' territory, the entire United States will be thrown into chaos. So, that's why I came here to remind you. I hope you will accept the covert protection of SHIELD. Nick Fury said to Li Feng seriously. He deliberately used the word, protection. Just to gain Li Feng's trust. But obviously, Li Feng doesn't like this. Protection. I don't need your protection. Li Feng said lightly, but I'm very interested in the news you provided. It seems that Magneto is indeed ready to attack himself. Then the apocalypse phantom scene that night must have been made by this guy. However, Li Feng still doesn't care. With his strength, he would only take a look at Apocalypse unless he came in front of him in person. You have to think about it. Nick Fury seemed to have expected that Li Feng would refuse, so he calmly said. I know you don't want to expose your strength, let alone let Emma know your identity. SHIELD's agent can protect you without anyone noticing. I can guarantee that as long as Magneto approaches 100 meters away from your house, SHIELD will immediately send someone to intercept it. Besides, I will also arrange human protection for your old father-in-law, how about it? After speaking, Nick Fury looked at Li Feng confidently, waiting for his response. This was the last way he could think of. If Li Feng agrees, it will be equivalent to owe him a favor, and this favor can still be used whatever happens to the Earth at that time. If Li Feng refuses, he certainly won't say no. No one would say no, right? Unless Li Feng really intends to drag his family to face Magneto and his men. You know, in order to catch Magneto, SHIELD did not know how many agents and special forces died. That's an alpha-level mutant. But what Li Feng said in the next second made him stay where he was. Oh, can you tell me where Magneto is? I'll meet him for tea and chat. There was both disdain and playfulness in the tone. Nick Fury barely recovered. Looking for tea with Magneto. Chat. What a joke. What's the difference between this and the rabbit sending itself to the tiger's mouth? Ahem, Li Feng, I don't quite understand the way you joke, and I don't want to joke with you. Nick Fury twitched the corner of his mouth. Obviously, he thought Li Feng was making fun of him. I'm not kidding you. Li Feng stretched his waist and said firmly. I was serious. If you know where Magneto is, welcome to tell me. I've been worrying about having nothing to do recently. Is it strange to chat with him? Seeing Li Feng's serious expression, Nick Fury reacted. This guy, no kidding. Call. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, I don't know the whereabouts of Magneto, and even if I knew, for your safety, I wouldn't tell you. High sounding. Li Feng sneered and said, then let him come to me. I don't need the protection of SHIELD, it sounds like surveillance. Also, it's better to keep your people 100 meters away from my villa. Otherwise I'd be taking out the trash regularly, you know what I mean. Nick Fury showed helplessness and sighed inwardly. It failed. This was the first time that he failed to solicit when he went out in person. But at least chatted for a few words and got to know Li Feng better. Well, I hope you don't do anything to my subordinates. They have no malicious intentions. Nick Fury shrugged his shoulders and said, before I say goodbye, I have a secret to tell you, why don't you listen to it? Li Feng folded his hands on his chest, glanced at the time, there was 1 minute left, nodded and said, say. I have to say that the information provided by Nick Fury is quite useful. At least it would give him an idea of what's been going on in the Marvel Universe lately. It doesn't hurt to have a listen. This is a report. Nick Fury took out a file bag from his black jacket, handed it to Li Feng, and said, it's the report from the hospital where Emma was locked up, and there are some surveillance files in it. Video. After identification, we suspect that Emma has a dual personality. Quote. Hearing Nick Fury's words, Li Feng's eyes suddenly turned cold. Nick Fury, I told you, Emma is my reverse scale. If you think you can stir up the feelings between us to gain my trust, then I advise you to have 9 lives. Killing intent emerges. Cold sweat broke out on Nick Fury's forehead again. But he still maintained his composure, and said with a slightly trembling tone, don't think so, Li Feng, I don't mean anything malicious, the files are all true, and there's the hospital's seal underneath, don't you know it after looking at it? Li Feng stared into his eyes for a long time before opening the portfolio and looking it up. It is indeed the patient information issued by a certain hospital. There are also photos of Emma when she was a child. Dual personality. Schizophrenia. Do you often talk to yourself in the mirror? This. Li Feng frowned, the White Queen never mentioned it to him. There is also a video attached, I watched it privately, please forgive my rashness. Nick Fury said softly, in the video, Emma likes to talk to herself in the mirror, and every time she speaks, her expression will change, if summed up in words, one is at a loss, and the other is arrogance. Quote. In previous statistics on mutants, nearly 67% of mutants will have mental illnesses in childhood, and schizophrenia is normal. But Emma's schizophrenia is terrifying, more terrifying than ordinary people. Chapter 27 Another White Queen Close Black Lens Bracket. Hearing these 2 words, Li Feng's pupils shrank slightly, scary. Yes. Nick Fury said with a flash of fear in his eyes, I don't know what her mutant ability is, but it's obviously related to the spirit. According to the hospital's records, every time she talks to herself in the mirror when the time comes, the entire hospital will hear an ancient sound of fighting, as if the ancient gods are descending on the battlefield, and an invisible pressure of death will make all the patients tremble. In my memory, there has never been a mutant with this ability. Have you seen it? Li Feng didn't answer, but fell into deep thought. He's been through so much with Emma, he's never seen the other side of Nick Fury's mouth. Talking to yourself in the mirror. Another personality. He didn't know any of this. Even, Emma never mentioned it. If you haven't seen it, you should be careful. I have no ill intentions towards Emma, but I suspect, she may have an alter ego hiding something that you don't know about. Nick Fury said softly. Although he didn't say it clearly, Li Feng could tell that it was a warning to himself. He paused, thinking back to the first time he met Emma. At that time, Emma was injured all over her body. After meeting Li Feng, she passed out immediately and didn't say anything. At that time Li Feng was in a panic, but he rescued her in time. In this way, the two developed feelings and got to know each other. When Li Feng knew that Emma was the White Queen and the daughter of the richest man in Massa City, he felt that his director's path finally had hope. But thinking about it now, there are some doubts. Why did Emma find herself in the crowd? Is it a coincidence in the dark? Or time and space confusion? Li Feng took a deep breath in his heart. But soon, he calmed down, picked up the file bag in his hand, and threw it into the air. Whoosh! An invisible flame of nothingness instantly burned the file bag to ashes. Watching this scene, Nick Fury froze. Come on, Nick Fury. Li Feng waved his hand at him with a cold tone. I will always keep my trust in Emma because she is my only wife. Even if she has a split personality, Even if she has a dual personality, I believe she loves me deeply. Even if she makes any mistakes, I will take care of her. Furthermore, these are my family affairs, you are not qualified to manage them. I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of here. Killing intent emerged again. Nick Fury paused, then nodded slightly, turned and left. What should be said, he has already said. As for whether Li Feng would believe it or not, he couldn't control it. During the conversation between the two, Nick Fury did not fall behind, whether it was threats or persuasion. He believed that Li Feng could see that he had full sincerity. The next thing is to see good fortune. What he didn't tell Li Feng, though, was that S.H.I.E.L.D. would never watch Massa City fall to mutant territory. So when necessary, he will definitely choose to become an enemy with Li Feng. It's just that what he didn't know was that even so, Li Feng didn't care at all. It's just a shield. If you really want to become an enemy with yourself, then just destroy it. At worst, facing that purple potato monster in the future, wouldn't it be over if I personally replaced Avengers? Still threatening yourself. In the face of absolute strength, threats have an egg. And no matter what kind of disease Emma has, Li Feng will not be defensive against her. The relationship between the two has already laid the foundation. No one can overthrow it. The chat is over. Who is it? As soon as he walked back to the living room, Emma's gentle voice came to his ears. Li Feng's thoughts were swept away. He grinned, and said, I just sell insurance. The insurance seller. White Queen was taken aback for a moment, then frowned. The insurance seller still wears sunglasses. I like to act aggressive in broad daylight. Li Feng hugged him into his arms and said, my dear wife, what delicious food did you cook? After the two had a good meal, Li Feng drove away from the villa as usual, worrying about his career. After White Queen cleaned up the dining table, she returned to her room, stood in front of the huge amounts of floor-to-ceiling mirror, looked at her bumpy figure, and raised the corners of her mouth. She heard the conversation between Li Feng and Nick Fury just now. When she heard Nick Fury hand over the so-called file bag to Li Feng, she almost couldn't control herself and rushed out of the villa. But when she heard Li Feng's touching words and came back without a portfolio, she was very moved. This is the love she wants. Unconditional trust and support. We all love him, don't we? At this time, the White Queen in the mirror suddenly raised the corners of her mouth, spoke, and seemed to be a different person, with an extremely cold and arrogant expression. When are you going to tell him the truth? The White Queen outside the mirror crossed her legs lazily and asked. It's still early. The White Queen in the mirror folded her arms and shook her head to respond, although I have noticed that the 9 realms sent people down to look for me, I don't want to be discovered by them. My body is still recovering. So is the power. But I don't want to hide it from him. The White Queen outside the mirror pursed her bright red lips and said, if he knows that I still have you in my body, he will be angry. No, he won't. The White Queen in the mirror smiled and shook his head, because he also has something to hide from us. What's the matter? The White Queen outside the mirror was taken aback. Definitely is something that you and I don't know. The White Queen in the mirror walked back and forth, admiring herself, and raised the corner of her mouth, but I'm getting more and more interested in him. Then tonight, you will replace me. The White Queen outside the mirror smiled and said, how is it, Sister Gila? The White Queen in the mirror had a blush on her cheeks, and after a few seconds of hesitation, she nodded in agreement. Don't go back on your word. A triumphant smile appeared on the White Queen's face outside the mirror. At the same time, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Now that another self is willing to face Li Feng, the next development will not be so difficult. If Li Feng really alienates her because of Nick Fury, she will be very sad. In fact, she also thought about directly telling Li Feng her other identity, but after thinking about it, she still felt that this matter needs to be accepted slowly. After all, that guy named Gila is not from Earth. But White Queen also understands that sooner or later she will leave her body and face Li Feng formally. Chapter 28. Magneto and Hash 039, S Ambition Close Black Lens Bracket. By that time, what will Li Feng do? Will he still choose to love her unconditionally like now? White Queen doesn't know, and she doesn't know what to do. But soon she realized that this was not something she should consider, but Li Feng. And what she needs to do now is to protect Li Feng. Magneto. Mutant. Shield. Those guys who want to destroy my relationship with Li Feng, don't even try to escape. My man can only belong to me. No one can take him away. At the same time, Massa City, Underground World, headquarters. When Angel and Griffin were planning how to use their men and properties to make money, three figures suddenly walked in from the door. The two were about to get angry, but they saw the face among the three figures clearly through the light. Moment. Angel and Griffin looked terrified, bent slightly, and shouted at the same time, "Boss, why are you here?" Those who came were Magneto, Mystique and Vibe. Among them, Magneto was dusty and dressed in a long robe, walked to the seat with a calm face, and said, "How is the situation?" Griffin and Angel looked at each other, and the former said in horror, "Boss, according to your request, we sent people to keep an eye on Li Feng and Emma, but they were wiped out before they survived an hour. If we want to act forcefully, that guy named Li Feng will definitely not let us go." Magneto frowned upon hearing this. "Boss, you are right, Li Feng is indeed an Omega-level mutant, and his strength is even comparable to yours." The Griffin gritted its teeth and bowed its head to report to Magneto. Magneto propped his chin and said to himself, Emma, why don't you want to come to see me? It turns out that there is such a powerful man by your side, no wonder." "Boss, will our plan still be implemented?" The Vibe woman walked to Magneto, leaned over and said, "Omega-level mutants can only be dealt with by you." If Li Feng heard their conversation here, he would understand that from the runaway taking over the underground world of Massa City, to the appearance of Griffin and Angel, it was basically Magneto's arrangement behind the scenes. The emergence of Magneto is naturally similar to the plan Nick Fury said. The only difference is that Magneto does not intend to do something to the richest man in Massa City, but recruit Li Feng. Omega-level mutant. There are no more than 10 fingers in all mutants. If the White Queen and Li Feng can be recruited into his subordinates, then mutants' plan to ban humans will be easier to implement. This is Magneto's ambition. I can't make a move. Magneto pondered for a few seconds, and said, "If I make a move, the X-Men gang will definitely find me the first time. This is not very beneficial to us now. So, boss, are we going to take a break?" Mystique asked, "Maybe I can talk to Emma again." "No, it's not necessary." Magneto said with deep eyes, playing with a square magnet in his hand, "Bring Emma to me, I want to ask her something." "You mean, kidnapping?" Griffin and Angel looked at each other, with a flash of fear in their eyes. "But, we can't deal with that guy named Li Feng." Magneto glanced at the two shivering guys, waved to Mystique beside him, and said, "Find a way to get rid of that Omega-level mutant named Li Feng, and if possible, create some opportunities for him to follow him." "You sleep." Quote. "Yes." Mystique nodded slightly. With her ability to change at will, it shouldn't be difficult to charm Li Feng. Magneto turned his head to look at Vibe Girl, and ordered, "You take Nightwalker to see Emma, Angel and Griffin will support you. Don't do anything unless necessary. If she doesn't want to come, let Apocalypse come forward, presumably she will. I will not let go of such a good opportunity." Quote. Understood. The Vibe Girl turned and left. After they all left, a phantom appeared behind Magneto. "You woke me up just to make me your subordinate." This voice is dry and empty, as if it came from the ancient times. "No, please wait a little longer, and you will see the scene you want soon." Magneto raised the corner of his mouth and sneered, his eyes full of madness. The Nine Realms, Asgard. After regaining the approval of Mjolnir, Thor returned to Asgard according to the progress of the plot. After meeting the Father Odin, who is known as the Lord of the Nine Worlds, and the King of God, Thor learned a secret from him. This secret is the key to the plot of Thor 2. Loki is a descendant of the giants of Jotunheim. When the secret came out, Asgard changed drastically. Reality Gem in Infinite Gems also appeared in front of Thor and others. It is worth mentioning that the plot of Thor 2 Inches did not undergo some chaotic changes in time and space as it did around Li Feng located on the Earth, but it still entered the progress of the main line. First Loki Blacken, then Reality Gem entered the body of Thor's girlfriend, and then the two brothers turned against each other. Loki fell into the abyss, life and death unknown. The plot of Thor 2 Inches also completed. Thor, who personally solved his younger brother, discovered the secret above the Asgard temple by accident. The god of death, Hela, turned out to be his sister, and once fought with Odin on the battlefield, conquering the present 9 realms. He is the first heir to Asgard. This level of credit and honor is a more painful torture for Thor, who has always liked to be competitive since childhood, than knowing that his younger brother was not born to his parents. To find out why, he lashed out at Odin. But Odin didn't explain anything, and he also reprimanded Thor with the majesty of the Lord of the 9 Realms, never to inquire about Hela's secrets, otherwise he will be expelled from Asgard. But everyone knows Thor's character. He has always been the most reckless person, not only did not listen to his father's warning, but also sneaked into the abyss of Asgard dungeon. Here, he met his mother, the goddess of the sky who was known as the most beautiful body in the 9 realms. Stop here, child. Frigga looked gentle, blocking Thor's way. Don't get in my way, mother. Thor waved Mjolnir in his hand, his eyes were extremely determined. I need to see her. She is the only heir to Asgard, isn't she? Chapter 29 Too Fierce, really too fierce, seeking flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. Your father told me that she has escaped from dungeon. Frigga sighed softly, and said, Hela is a child we picked up from the distant ancient interstellar. She has possessed great power since she was a child. These forces led to her growing ambitions, and your father chose to seal her after he unified the 9 realms. Father used her and betrayed her, didn't he? A look of sadness flashed across Thor's face, and he couldn't help but feel chilled by this sister who had never masked her face. Hela unified the 9 realms for Odin and made great contributions, but in the end he was imprisoned in the bottomless dungeon because of his ambition. No one could bear this result. That's why we're worried about it. Frigga said softly, turning to look at the paintings on the wall. It's been 8 years since Hela escaped from Asgard, and during these 8 years, Asgard has never found her traces. Once she returns with terrifying power, the 9 realms will be in turmoil, which is why Odin decided to raise you as Thor. Quote. Thor was silent for 2 seconds, and asked, Odin wants me to kill her. Call them by their first names. Frigga turned her head, stared into Thor's eyes, nodded after a while and said, This is your destiny, child. To deal with one's own sister and kill one's younger brother, is this the so-called destiny? Thor laughed at himself, glanced at Mjolnir in his hand, and looked sad. My child. Frigga stepped forward, stroked his cheek, and said, If you want to change everything, go back to Earth. Go back to Earth. Thor frowned slightly and asked puzzledly, Why? Heimdall told me that the last time Hela used her power was in that small star field on the Earth. Frigga said softly, If you ever thought about finding her and meeting her without telling your father, then you can only go to Earth and use Mjolnir's divine power as a pull to find out where she is. However, you have to remember that if you don't find Hela before Heimdall, then she will be sealed again by Odin. I don't want you to fight your own father. Understood. Thor nodded towards the virtuous mother, and quickly turned and left. Seeing Thor's figure go further and further away, Frigga stood there and shook her head. At this time, Odin, wearing a long robe, came out of a side chamber. He could clearly hear the conversation between the two of them earlier. Thor, you've grown up too. With a gentle smile on his face, Odin looked in the direction Thor left. You asked me to tell him this, why? Frigga looked puzzled. Odin shook the scepter in his hand, walked slowly towards the wall, stroked the mural on it, and said softly, Frigga, I have a feeling that the 9 realms are about to fall into chaos. Big chaos. Frigga was slightly pale, she knew that Odin's words were never wrong. As for me, my time is approaching. Odin closed his eyes, sighed, and said, after living for 1,000,000 years, the 9 realms will finally come to this day. Hearing this, Frigga's beautiful face became a little haggard. After a few seconds of silence, she walked behind Odin and gently pressed it against his back. Thor is a very powerful child. Odin held her slender hand and said with a solemn expression, but this catastrophe cannot be carried by him alone. So, you plan to let Hela assist him? Frigga asked. No, Odin shook his head and said, Hela is a great threat to the god realm, and she must hate me very much. It would still be a disaster if she returned to Asgard. Even if she appeared in front of me again, I will also choose to seal her. Then, why did you let Thor go to Earth? Frigga asked, puzzled. To survive. After dropping these words, Odin turned around and walked outside the dungeon. As the most powerful and most combative king of war in the entire 9 realms, he will eventually grow old one day. After the Griffin and Angels funds entered the Marvel Films Company, Limited, founded by Li Feng, all businesses officially entered a state of orderly operation. And Li Feng, as the only chairman, naturally couldn't let go of such an opportunity to be the shopkeeper. After he handed over the rest of the work to the agent, he rushed back to the villa immediately. Today's dusk is particularly dazzling. As soon as he entered the living room, he heard a cold voice in his ear. You still know to come back. What time is it? Hearing this familiar tone, Li Feng froze for a moment. Seem. What's wrong? But I can't say it. He smiled at the White Queen, stepped forward and put his arms around her slender waist, and said, My lord, I'm too busy with work, but don't worry, I plan to go on a trip tomorrow, just you and me. Travel. The White Queen gave a light, oh, and said, travel or not, we'll talk about it tomorrow, let's finish what we have to do tonight first. Tonight. Li Feng was taken aback for a moment, what's the matter? Before the words finished, the White Queen actually grabbed Li Feng's tie and got into the kitchen. After a while, there was an indescribable panting sound from the whole villa. The next day, Li Feng supported his waist and finished the breakfast prepared by the White Queen with a tired face. Too fierce. It was too fierce. From getting married to now, he had never seen White Queen so aggressive. It's almost like a different person. However, this also suits Li Feng's taste. The colder the woman is, the more exciting it will be when you conquer her. Thinking of those novel tricks last night, Li Feng couldn't help laughing. Such a good wife, not much better than what Natasha Romanoff. It really is a moment of spring night worth 1,000 gold. After dinner, Li Feng changed into a suit and officially set off with White Queen. Today is much earlier than usual. There is no other reason. Li Feng has officially taken over the transfer ceremony of the private jet, and there are 3 civil aviation stewardesses on the crew. The plane has been sent to the nearby airport, waiting for him to pick up. Coincidentally, Li Feng also planned to take the White Queen out for a stroll, staying away from Massa City for the time being. After all, if you have money, you always have to experience life and spend it generously. Li Feng's idea is very simple. He directly hires a captain who can fly a plane to serve him, and then chooses Alaska, a frontier city known as the most beautiful snow scene in the United States, as his destination. At that place, Li Feng purchased a private estate in advance, intending to use it exclusively for brewing aged wine. Chapter 30. The plan fell through, seeking flower evaluation votes, close black lens bracket. Just take this opportunity to feel the snow scene in winter. The two quickly arrived at the airport, and after submitting all boarding procedures, they finally saw this Boeing 747 that belonged exclusively to Li Feng. The process of waiting for takeoff was quite long. After all, there were still civil aviation aircraft that needed to operate. Li Feng took this opportunity to take out his mobile phone to check the latest news. To his slight surprise, the headline video cover of YouTube turned out to be a huge amounts of green giant. This giant is full of muscles, wearing a pair of underpants, and has a fierce face. Li Feng froze for a moment, then clicked in. In the video, Hulk was smashing and beating on the street, and there were many tanks and armored vehicles around him that he directly smashed with his fists. There were dozens of mosaic corpses at the scene. The scene was much bloodier than in the movie. But the strange thing is, in the video, Hulk's face is extremely calm. He doesn't seem to have lost his mind at all, and he can clearly see a trace of calm emotion from his expression. Why is that? In Li Feng's impression, every time Hulk got angry, his face was full of anger. But in the YouTube video, Hulk clearly looks like, have fun. Yes. It's fun to smash, and it's fun to kill. Could it be that Professor Banner at this stage can already master the Hulk as he pleases? Li Feng thought about it, and finally rejected this idea. And turned off the phone. After all, none of this had anything to do with him. Even if Professor Banner can really control Hulk, the plot will still not change in any way. As for the Hulk causing harm to humans, let S.H.I.E.L.D. handle it. What's more, he also saw the shadow of the military in the video. It must not be long before Hulk will collide with the Abomination, and things will definitely subside by then. As the plane took off, Li Feng quickly put the Hulk matter behind him. With that time, it would be better to think about Alaska, how to play with the White Queen. Moreover, it is said that there is also a top-level delicacy in Alaska reindeer meat. This kind of meat not only provides a lot of nutrition, but also has the effect of enriching breasts. If White Queen can eat more, it will definitely be a big deal good thing. Thinking of this, Li Feng chuckled. Although the White Queen's figure has surpassed most of the goddess-level tasks, but how can anyone dislike the lack of money and the beauty of his wife, right? This is also for the sake of everyone's sexual life. In the real world, which man is not an old pervert? As the plane entered the troposphere, White Queen's face became significantly happier. She came to Li Feng's side, opened the window shutter, looked at the dazzling sun and white clouds outside, hummed softly, and asked in a rather expectant tone, "Why do you suddenly think of going to Alaska?" Li Feng thought for a while and smiled, "Because I plan to make a TV series called Breaking Bad, and part of the filming location is here." "Definitely, the most important reason is to want to all take you around." This pun answer successfully caught White Queen's coquettish stare. What kind of story is that? White Queen propped her chin, her eyes gradually blurred. It's a story with a lot of trivialities. Li Feng hugged her into his arms, but his eyes inadvertently glanced at her neck. There is a mark. It is a triangle with an upright eye embedded in it. This is. Li Feng's pupils shrank slightly. This is not. In the Marvel world, is there a mark only in the God realm? What's wrong? The White Queen turned her head suddenly, her beautiful eyes frowning. Li Feng chuckled, stretched out his hand and started to move around. The White Queen shot him a glare and broke free. Li Feng took advantage of the gap to get into the cockpit, and had a casual conversation with the captain. Rich man's feeling. Very nice. Although he can fly the plane himself, it is not necessary. Yes, but not necessary. Why spend money on things that can be solved by yourself? There are still 2 hours to arrive at the destination, boss. The captain turned his head and smiled slightly at Li Feng. The wonderful trip has officially begun. Just half an hour after Li Feng left the villa, White Queen nodded to the security guard with a blank expression, and walked into the villa in front of them. The two security guards froze for a moment, and looked at each other. Apart from being curious, they didn't pay much attention to why the hostess left and returned. After the White Queen entered the living room, her entire pretty body began to change, gradually turning into a blue body. Where are people? Why is there no one? Mystique looked around, suddenly a little speechless. According to intelligence, isn't Li Feng staying in the villa all the time today, and Emma is going to the hospital to take care of her mother? But why? Not a single person. After waiting for a long time, Mystique did not see Li Feng, so he could only take out his phone and call Magneto. Hey, boss, no one is here. Not here. Yes, neither Emma nor he is here. ... Then you come back first. Good. The plan fell through. Li Feng, who was enjoying the spring festival moment on the plane, had no idea that a conspiracy against him was being carried out. Dayton, a suburb. In a hidden secret laboratory. A gigantic body was falling to the ground, holding its own neck with both hands, and kept making strange yells. And in the corner next to the laboratory, a beautiful figure in a white coat was trembling, looking at all this. After a full 10 minutes, the gigantic green body gradually returned to normal. It was Bruce Banner. He was naked, leaning against the wall with a weak face. His whole face was extremely pale. Chen Ying from the corner came up cautiously with a blanket, covered him, and asked softly, "Professor Banner, the side effects of the drug seem to be serious this time." Banner nodded slightly, with a lost look on his face. "I thought the effects of gamma rays would be suppressed with anti-cancer drugs, but I was wrong. It's a drug that makes my brain sane, but it makes Hulk more excited. That's not what I want to see, and we have to keep changing the formulation of the drug." After speaking, Banner struggled to get up from the ground, ignoring the blanket slipping off his body. Seeing this scene, Chen Ying couldn't help but blushed and turned her head away. "Betty, how many experimental drugs can you get from your father?" Professor Banner asked softly. "I have to get out of here. Hulk has caused a lot of noise outside. I plan to go to Massa City. That place is messy, perfect for me to hide."